Hey everybody, welcome to me going through the patch notes. How long is this video going to last? Who knows? Because the patch that's incoming later today, I believe it is, the 13th of February, is ginormous. It's probably the single biggest patch the game has had, not including the game from going, 6v6 to 5v5. That was literally a game change. People have been joking calling this Overwatch 3, and I can kind of see the reason why. So I'm going to scroll through some of the patch notes. There's some things I'm not going to talk about too much. I really want to get into like the nitty-gritty about the changes to the gameplay aspect itself rather than events and stuff that come with it, or the rank system, honestly. But we'll go over those at first. Also, you can see on the right now, I've made some like quick notes to remind myself as I go through this, some of the benefits for these changes for the heroes. And I've done it for every single hero in the roster, with a small exception in the Pharah, because who knows what Farah is going to be like with the rework. Even then, though, I did put a few notes. Anyway, Season 9 is going to be called Champions. There's going to be a new co-op event called Cosmic Crisis, which is going to be, a lot of fun to play with your friends. Hopefully it is as good as the Mischief and Magic events. I know it's not very well balanced, but hell, it's still a really fun game mode. And honestly, a lot of the PvE events they've done recently have generally been pretty good. It's obviously not always promised when the Overwatch 2 development was originally announced, but I think they're slowly building bridges and realizing like you have to support the core gameplay loop over the PvE side of things, but it's not to say that they shouldn't ignore the PvE side of things. So I think that draws a lot of people back to the game, especially people that don't play this as religiously as some of the other content creators out there or some of the pros out there. But anyway, I'm looking forward to playing the new event. There's then a bunch of competitive play updates. Again, I'm not going to go through this too much, but I'll mention a few small things. Firstly, there's going to be a rank reset, and it's mainly because they say that there's such a huge amount of change to the patch notes that they decide to reset everyone's rank, and you're going to have to, re-climb back up. And this is going to be true for both role queue and open queue in competitive play. The only thing I have a small question about of this is, and this comes to like how the actual system works, and it's a bit of a black box how the Overwatch competitive system works, and even they've been saying like we need to tell you more accurately or what is going on, what you're doing, how it's reflecting your matchmaking score or whatever you want to be, your placement, your rank. Classically, though, the game, from like its originality, has a hidden NMR stat. Hidden, yeah, good going me. So it's some hidden number, and you can't see this number, but it basically says like the game thinks you are this good. Let's say, and let's just say it's a numerical thing, like it was with SR, and it's somewhere between 0 and 3,000. So it has this number here, and I believe this number can be like impacted upon playing other game modes as well, other than just competitive, or maybe there's like a specific one for each game mode. Who knows? Again, no one ever figured out exactly how this worked, but there's this hidden number. There is then, or what was your SR, or what your rank is now, and this is reflected by what your actual number is in competitive. And typically the system would try and pull you towards this hidden value, because this is like what the game thought how good you were. So kind of irrespective of how good you were on ranks and what your win streaks were, it always felt like it was trying to pull you down to this value, which was dictated by how good you were on heroes. Like I think it actually took metrics on the quality of how you played heroes. Like you would check your damage per 10 on Sombra or something when it was trying to work stuff out. But anyway, as I said, this was all a big black box system. So my question about this with the rank reset is there still this hidden value somewhere in the log somewhere? Because it's all well and good saying, we're re-ranking all the players, but if the game still thinks, you're not gold anymore, you're unranked, but the game still thinks you should be a gold player, it's probably going to pull you more towards the gold players. It's a bit like you see these tweets and people go like, oh, this person has played, I don't know, they played 12 quick play games and 50 ranked games, and they're rank 1 with like a 20% win rate. And the reason for that normally is that they stormed through the quick play games, won like all 50 games. The system has come through and gone like, holy shit, this guy is insane. Like he has to be a GM player. So irrespective of what you did during your placements, the game just goes like, we have to put this guy in GM. Like we've checked it versus the MMR of other players, they same value, and that's where he belongs. So that's how that like weird oddities are affected. It does mention down here, and it might be a bit further down, that Oh no, maybe it's here. Yeah, your placements have a significant impact on your final rank. So maybe they're trying to change it a little bit so that every season you can kind of change this hidden value, and maybe you do better in your placements. It's reflect by these hidden values that, okay, this guy's actually better now this season than he was before, so we'll make it easy for him to get these like higher ranks. I don't know how it's all going to work. They're probably never going to tell you exactly. However, you're going to have these nice, neat little bars saying like, you know, you got plus 10 competitive scores because you're on a win streak. We didn't expect you to win this game, so another plus 10 and so on and so forth. So I like the openness of the system. It's not fully open the box, but like it's giving you a little peek inside the box. Anyway, there are also some pretty big changes to how you can queue and the rank system entirely. So now the top rank in the game is no longer Grandmasters. Grandmasters still exist, but there's a new tier called Champion. This is almost equivalent to what top 500 is, I suppose. Although, as I understand it, it is going to be harder to get into than top 500. And I even heard tell of, I think it was Alec Dawson was talking about this on a tweet or on stream with maybe Emong or someone like that he doesn't think anyone's going to reach the champion rank in the first season. That this is going to be in place, i.e. Season 9. Now, I don't know about that because he may underestimate the grinding capability of certain players in the game. But it is a nice thing for these top elite level players to aim for, especially if it's a numerical system where they can see it's going up and down and how far they're away from other people. And it just holds a little bit of, swag about it, a little bit of street cred. So I'm really looking forward to seeing like how the best players, because I'm never going to push this champion rank, let's be honest. It's really interesting to see what these truly elite players will be doing in champion and how hard it is to get in the system and how hard it is to stay in the champion rank. That's what I'm really interested in. Also, the big change is this new grouping requirement, and this somewhat spooks me a little bit. So, Bronze and Diamond can queue with other players from 2 skill tiers of their own rank. I.e., if you are a Gold player, you can queue, I believe, with a Bronze player, or you could queue with, like, a Diamond player. But then I don't know if the Bronze player could be in with the Diamond, if you know what I mean. Like, you could go into, like, a full Diamond. Like, you could be the 1 Gold with 4 Diamonds, and that's fine. You could be the 1 Gold with 4 Bronzes, but I don't think you can mix and match with the Bronze because they're more than 2 tiers apart. And you can 5-stack is the important thing, and that's not different from what it is before. Masters can only queue with players from 1 skill tier of their own rank, so they can play with Diamonds or GMs, but I believe they can 5-stack still. Here's where things get interesting. Grandmasters can only do within 3 skill divisions, so you have to be within GM. Like, if you're GM1, I guess you'd have to queue with someone that is... I don't know if it's inclusive, so I don't know if you could be GM4. I assume you can, because that's the way it works right now. But you can queue with a GM4 as a GM1. Critically, this used to be you could only duo, though. You could only play with 2 players. None of this says you only can play with 2 players anymore, and actually this is specified on here, the champion player rank. So I assume 5-stacking in GM is back. Now, this is what kind of spooks me a little bit, because there used to be, well, it was 6-stacking in GM when it was a thing, because it was in Overwatch 1. And what would happen was that people would queue as a 6-stack. It'd be like a full, a full team of people from one team, like, be one of the Korean teams or one of the Saudi teams or one of the EU teams. And they would all play together at late night, and they would artificially basically inflate their ranking because they're playing obviously against people of less quality, as the game can't matchmake. Like, let's use OWL teams as an example because it's dead. But they couldn't match like the Florida Mayhem team versus 5 random people playing the game, right? There just weren't players of that caliber playing. So eventually the game was like, okay, you can play against these 5 guys, but you're probably you're not going to lose. So I think it would try to give you a little bit less SR, but you would still be getting the SR regardless. And people would literally climb to the top ranks that you couldn't exceed anymore. So that got removed from the game and was replaced with 2-stacking. I think with the new system in place where it actually is actively showing you, like, we expected you to win this game, so you're not going to get as much SR, or whatever you want to call it, as before. I think they're hoping that this system then basically deals with that issue, that 5-stacking isn't a problem. Also, the main reason to 5-stack is to elevate your rank to the highest of highest levels. So I think the game will have a problem with 5-stacking players into champion rank. I could see that being a thing. But once you get to champion, you can only duo again, and it has to be within people of 3 skill divisions. This again begs the question though, because GM has a small issue right now, a very high GM of people boosting, so to speak, a GM1 account. The way they do that is they get a GM1 player on a GM4 account, which is the biggest skill difference you can have. And it makes the game easy, because if you're playing against a GM4 who isn't a GM1 player secretly, you obviously have a massive advantage. And you have to remember that the skill quality of games like this is normally a bell curve, right? So the difference between someone who is like, GM1 and let's say this is GM4 is probably bigger than the difference between someone that is plat and someone who is gold, who might be, on this part of the curve. So it is a bit of an issue, and I can see that being a thing again. I don't know, again, fully how the system of champion is going to work, but if there is like the SR system, then you'll have champion players duoing with like GM2 or GM1 players who are on the champion players on those accounts, and they will just be artificially inflating people up to high champion levels. I don't know if there's any way of dealing with it, or it's something you're just going to have to suck up and deal with it. I don't know. I simply don't know. But anyway, I like the champion system. It's going to bring some freshness to the game. I generally like the ranking requirement. I think it's good for content creators as well to be able to 5-stack potentially in GM at the very least. I think it's going to make placements a lot more fun. So I think it's a good thing, just full stop. Then it talks about the competitive point system, exactly how the progression works. The rewards, there's going to be new Jade weapons. People are saying they're ugly. I don't care. It's new content, whatever. If they do Jade weapons this season and, Ruby weapons next season and Cosmic weapons another season after that, they're doing something, okay? That's fine. I don't mind that. Again, this goes through some of the matchmaking rating that I've talked about, and so on and so forth. Anyway. Oh, and then you can endorse your friends. Nice. If you're a big lover of the tier 5 endorsement, it's going to be easy for you to get that now. Then there's a big crosshair update. Mercy mains have been buffed because you can now have a heart-shaped reticle. I look forward to seeing the Mercy TikTokers. Alright, and now we get into the meat and potato, and this is what I want to talk about the most. This is changes to the gameplay itself. And one of the biggest things, and I'd say there's 2 big things going into this. Maybe 3, but I would say 2 of them are more bigger than the others, okay? Not all these large changes are made equally. Some are made more equal than others. That type of deal. Basically, there is a full buff to projectile size. Projectile sizes in the game. If you're a hit scan projectile, you get plus 0.05 meters to the hit scan projectile. If you are a precise... What was it even called? Oh yeah, high rate of fire, sorry, 0.05. So it's like these soldier shots, the pellets, and... Actually, maybe it's not even soldier shots. No, it isn't, because this is precise. It's shotguns. Okay, fair enough. So shotguns get a small increase, which makes sense because they're all shots spread out, so you don't want them to have big projectile sizes, otherwise it's just like this big cone of damage incoming. If you're a hit scan with more accurate aim, like the pulse rifle, you get 0.08 instead. If you're a travel time projectile, you get 0.05, and it shows it in here again, Roadhog Scrap Gun, which is a moving projectile. It's not hit scan, but this is really covering for shotguns again. It's slower traveling shotguns. Then if you are a travel time projectile with a speed greater than 50 meters per second, i.e. Zenyatta's Destruction Orb, you get a bigger projectile size increase. There is then, if you're a speed slower than that, you get 0.15 meters instead, so like Farah's rockets are now chunkier. And then finally, if you're a larger than 0.5 meter projectile, you don't get an increase. So this is like the Javelin, Fire Strike. I assume accretion from Sigma is in here. But basically, the take-home message is projectile sizes are increasing across the board, some more than others. The other big change, and this I think is the second big... Well, actually, you know what? I say this is the second big thing. Maybe there are 4 changes. The health pools of all heroes are increasing. If you were a 150 to 175 hero, your health has been increased in some way by 25. Sometimes this isn't just base health. Sometimes it's armor, sometimes it's barrier, sometimes it's a mix of the two. If you were a 200 to 300 HP hero, you get 50, generally. And if you were a tank, you're getting 75 to 100. And they showed the precise health increases on the list below, and we'll go through those in turn. Ultimate charge has been increased by 10%. This again is to reflect the fact that every hero has got 25% more health. So there is more like ultimate charge points available on the map at any one time. So they had to make this change with it. That makes perfect sense. Alright, here comes another change. And I think some of these are now taken out of context than others. And I did do a patch note, if you remember, a few weeks ago about the director's tape, which was to do with this regenerative passive for all heroes. I did put, and I think I pinned the comment in the comment below, that after I made that video, Aaron Keller came out and said, like, sorry, I only gave you half the picture. There's some other changes that are coming in with this that make the health changes not quite as spooky. And I conceded in the comments that, okay, this was an overreaction. I left the video up, but it was a bit of an overreaction. And I think having seen all things now out there, it's still slightly in a vacuum because the patch, isn't out yet. I don't think this regenerative passive for all heroes is going to be a huge deal. Some heroes are going to be able to use it, some heroes are not going to be able to use it that much, but generally speaking, it's going to be fairly minor. I actually think it is going to be more of a nerf towards supports, just because you're going to be denying them health that they could have otherwise got. So, like, if you imagine a fight, ends, both your supports have died, you win the fight. Normally, your supports could heal off the damage that was dealt to your tanks and stuff. But now it's going to passively regenerate after 5 seconds, so your tank's going to have to be Ramatra in Nemesis form, sprinting back to spawn. It's like, come on, Anna, there's 200 health here for you, quickly. And as he's slowly regenerating the health back, and Anna's like, no, my ult charge. So I honestly think that might be the biggest change. There are some heroes like, again, Tracer, or maybe like an Echo or a Genji who can disengage from fights easier. But 5 seconds of waiting for 20 health per second, I can't remember what cart healing is, but I think that is around, I think that might be 20 health per second. Cart healing does make a pretty big difference, but waiting 5 seconds to get cart healing, I think it's really minor. But again, I think it's only going to be flankers that really can utilize this. And maybe, before a small mini pack wouldn't get them all the way back up to full. But now with the regenerative passive, they can get the mini, regenerate a little bit, get back to full health, and back into the fight again. So this was a big thing about the director's take a while ago, and I think it's not going to be that impactful. The support role passive now is reworded to be the same as it was before, but it's half of this general passive, which makes sense. Here's what I think is going to be the biggest one, and this might be the biggest change overall in the game, including to the health pools and the projectile size is going to be close to it, okay? It's really this one and the projectile size in turn that I think are going to make the biggest differences to the game. Damage passive used to be a reload speed bonus upon getting a kill. That is no longer the case. It only really affected very small pool of heroes. And I would say the biggest one of that was Ashe. So if Ashe killed someone, her reload time is insanely high, but she would she'd really rapidly put in those shells after getting a kill. Other than that, other heroes, especially if a hero didn't reload, like Hanzo, got no benefit of the DPS role passive. Now, instead though, dealing damage reduces enemy healing received by 20% for 2 seconds. So to counter the point of every hero getting a ton more health, 50, 25, 75 more health, it's harder for the support, or if you're a hero with a self-healing ability, it's harder for those heroes now to heal back off damage from damage-dealing targets. I.e., if you target focus the target your DPS is focusing on, it is easier to kill them probably than it was before. And overall, this is going to have this outcome of burst healing is going to be weaker on targets your DPS is focusing. And one-shots are going to be less of a thing because your health pool will take you above the breakpoint of most one-shots. And not a lot of damage abilities have been increased in damage. So I think there's going to be more of this. Fights are going to be more. You know what? I'm going to talk about this a bit later, I think. But I think that my gut feeling about how all this will end up working out is that I think it's going to be a defensive side buff, if you know what I mean. If you're going into a fight on the defensive side of things versus the attacking side of things, you're going to have a much easier time than you did before the patch notes. as you can step behind cover, basically. You can disengage the damage that your opponent is doing, assume you're taking sensible positions, and that's more likely something that the defensive team can do because of the defenders. They have the advantage that they can pick where the fight should be, they can pick their positions, whereas the attackers don't really get to pick their positions, or at least they don't get to pick the position where the fight is, but they can pick when the fight begins, if you know what I mean. And all that will happen is, if you're on the defensive side of things and you take this chip damage, you take the damage roll passive, you're struggling to get healed, just step behind cover, and then you're fine. Whereas the attackers probably have to walk through an area of space to get the next cover, and I think it's more likely they are going to get chunked down during this maneuver than the defensive side of things would be. So that's my gut feeling on the whole thing. But we'll go through hero by hero basis as we go through this. But I think this, in conjunction with projectile size increases, so the projectile size increases will make the DPS... Oh, sorry. For the DPS, the projectile size increases will make applying this passive easier. Those in combined are going to be the big things of this patch. Finally, quick melee is also going up from 30 to 40, which for some heroes is actually pretty big. But again, this was more to reflect the increase in health pools. So it makes sense, all right? Right, let's start the party. So again, a lot of these patch notes are just hero gains 50 health. But I want to talk about it as a whole. I want to include how the DPS passive is going to affect this, how the general passive is going to affect this, that type of thing. Anyway, D.Va. She has increased 25 health in pilot form. I mean, you don't ever really want to be in pilot form, but sure. That's just a consistency thing with the rest of the game. Importantly, she gains 75 health, but she gained it as armor. Armor is better than health in the fact that it mitigates more damage than health would. So it kind of makes her more unkillable, right? Extra 75 armor better than getting 75 health. So D.Va is going to be harder to kill than she was before. I've also noted here, quick melee buff is pretty big for D.Va. I said it wasn't going to be a big thing, but normally when you're playing as D.Va, I don't have a pink pen, you fly into someone, you gun them down with your main guns, you fire missiles at them at the same time, at very close range, and during this you will boop them with your mech. I can't remember what the boop damage is on the mech. Really good mech there. And you will quick melee during this combo as well, to combine all of these damage sources into an assassination attempt. So the quick melee for D.Va is actually probably more used than, for example, quick melee on Symmetra would be. So a quick melee buff is bigger for D.Va than other heroes, so she's going to enjoy that a lot more. However, the damage to the rest of her kit, so her weapons, her thrusters, are not changed, and for her, she is getting a projectile size change, but it's not going to be that impactful on D.Va, as normally you're flying into close range with an enemy. Let's say, I don't know, worst drawing of all time. This is your Cassidy, right? Definitely call Cassidy this. Good hat, me. You're going to be adjacent to him. Who cares about the projectile size increase? You weren't really missing before, you're not really missing now, so... Overall, it's going to make D.Va harder at assassinating single targets. She can, though, however, live longer than she could before. Is that good for D.Va as a whole? I don't think so. I think this, all in all, when all this is going to be said and done, respective to the changes of the other tanks in the game, I think this is going to be a nerf to D.Va. And D.Va wasn't particularly strong before, so I think it's a bit unfortunate. Now, what she is getting is she's getting a increase on her ultimate, but this is only a 11% increase in the damage on the ultimate. The ultimate mainly killed everything anyway, and I can't really see any breakpoints that this doesn't work with anymore, but it seems to basically just be the same. You hit the same breakpoints you did before, you'll kill the same targets you did before. The fall-off radius has increased, though, slightly, so it's a bit harder to get away from. However, you normally block line of sight versus the D.Va ult, right? You don't normally go, I'm 6 meters away, so I take slightly less damage. That's still going to kill you, so I think overall the changes are pretty minor for the ultimate. I think it doesn't do much. I actually think one of the changes, and I was trying to work this out the other day, I think if the change hadn't gone through from 900 to 1,000, I think Mauger and Cardiac Overdrive would have lived through a D.Va bomb now. But now changing it to 1,000, he doesn't. I think that was like the only breakpoint I could see where the difference mattered between going from 900 to 1,000. But generally, it's going to do the same thing. Other thing, though, that gives D.Va a slight positive, but I don't think it's going to... I don't think it's going to work out in the wash that it's going to be good enough, is that she can reset DPS passive. So again, just as a reminder, the DPS passive... Oh my god. The DPS passive is that you take 20% less healing, or you get 20% less healing, for 2 seconds after taking damage from a DPS hero. Where are we? There we go. D.Va's defense matrix, I don't remember what the entire thing is here. I had the wiki page open as well just for stuff like this. How much DM do you get? Is it like 4 seconds right now? 5 seconds? I should know this, I play a lot of D.Va. 3 seconds max when you just fully pump it out, right? And you can get the recovery. So it's 3 seconds max. So at the very, 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 very least with D.Va, if someone was getting dove or something like that, or there was a lot of pressure on one of your teammates, you could DM them and stop people taking advantage of the DPS passive. You could allow your healers to heal even though it's at a less amount, and you could let the passive drop off again, so they would eventually heal a lot more. But as I said, I think it's going to be just too hard. Like, the skill ceiling is going to be so unbelievably high on D.Va to, like, monitor DPS damage coming in. And it's DPS damage from, like, all sources, so it's not just cooldowns. I think overall it's going to end up being a nerf towards her. Now, Doomfist. Doomfist, honestly, I think there's some big positives for Doomfist. He gets 75 health, which is nice. It's, you know, in line with other heroes. He doesn't get his armor, he doesn't get his barriers, just flat out health. But, unlike a lot of the other tanks, he does get a damage increase. So his impact damage is going up from 50 to 75, and the wall slam damage, so when you punch someone, they hit a wall, and they take some impact damage to the wall, that's gone up from 30 to 40. The impact damage is 50%, by the way, which is more than the percentage health increases for most of the characters. The wall slam is also 33, which is, you know, also pretty hefty. That's, again, more than like the health percentage buff increases. So on paper, I think Doom is going to be insane, like really, really strong. Also, again, like D.Va, quick melee on Doom is very, very useful. A lot of the time you get close to heroes, you'll use your hand cannon and then cancel it with a punch as well, or you'll cancel the punch with a hand cannon more accurately. 40 damage instead of 30 damage, you know, that's going to make getting kills easier. Also, the increased projectile size on shotguns is going to make it easier for Doomfist to headshot people after he's punched them into the wall, because normally, you know, Doomfist punches someone, they go away, they hit a wall, and then Doomfist's cannon is not great on the older range, right? So it's kind of hard to one-shot them from this distance. Sorry, I'm moving my hands off screen. It's not easy to shoot them from a distance. But now with the projectile size increase, it's going to be more likely for him to hit headshots of the cannons. So I think his kill pressure is going to be definitely higher than it was before the patch. And I think comparably to other tanks, it's going to be really, really, really strong. Also, the projectile size increases helps for his block, because he's going to accidentally build up charge more. There were some times where people would be shooting at your block and they would be missing it because, you know, it's pellets and they have a spread, or it's a gun with a spread. Now he's going to get that supercharged punch more frequently, and the supercharged punch is going to be better. So, in a vacuum, if you just look at these changes, I think Doomfist is getting a really big buff. There's also another side point that I think Ryan is going to be really good, and typically when Ryan Fist is really good, Doomheart is also pretty good, as Doom is a reasonable counter to Ryan, or at least to Deathball comps, because Doom wants to punch a big group of people together, and Deathball plays as a big group of people together. However, and this is going to be my big question mark, I did see that Get Quaked on tweeted that they tested and I think this was a patch via the workshop, so I kind of take this with a bit of pinch of salt. But apparently there are some bug fixes to Doomfist that makes him feel sluggish and have stopped certain combos working. So you used to have to, like, you know, you would slam out a spawn, you would punch out spawn and cancel the punch with a slam, and you'd get huge momentum on the slam. Apparently that doesn't work anymore, and equally, once you've punched, you can't E immediately. Like, it takes like half a second for it to come up, and I believe it's counted as a bug fix. If that does come into the game and Doomfield's really not fluid, then it's going to be a big nerf to him, this patch. Irrespective of the damage numbers, if the hero doesn't feel fluid, he won't feel good, he won't be able to escape from things as easier, he'll get chunked down by things a lot quicker, and he won't be able to get back to fights as quick. So I say it's going to be a nerf. It'll probably be a break-even point at that point. The numbers are better, but he feels worse. But we'll have to see, because as I said, it wasn't the actual patch I believe they were playing on. It was merely a workshop code. So who knows? The workshop probably broke half the game anyway. Junker Queen, she gets 75 more health. Also, her wound damage when she uses Rampage, which is her ultimate, the wound damage over time has been increased from 60 to 90. That's really big. That's a 50% damage increase on the wounds. And you have to remember the wounds are tied into Adrenaline Rush, so she gets lifesteal off this, kind of. So a few things about Junker Queen. Her pellets are going to be easier to hit because she has like a shotgun weapon. And the wound damage, as I said, is gone up by 50% on the ult. This should be only on the Q. Adrenaline Rush is based on a percentage of wound damage. I put the only Rampage here, my bad. So yeah, it's based on a percentage of the wound damage. So the wound damage going up on Rampage means that Adrenaline Rush is better on the ultimate. However, obviously Adrenaline Rush is a huge part of Junker Queen's kit. Whenever she puts wounds on people via a knife, either it's throwing knives at people, the knife cutting through people on the recoil, meleeing people, axing people, it gives her a lot of sustain, and the hero's tankiness or ability to sustain in a fight is really dictated by this Adrenaline Rush. Whenever Adrenaline Rush has been really strong, or the wounds have been really strong, Junker Queen has been like nigh on unkillable in certain comps and has been meta. When it's been really bad, she's not been obviously as strong. Adrenaline Rush is a healing ability. It suffers super, super, super hard by the DPS passive. Now, if you do work this all out, if she ults now and hits, a couple of people in the team, she will have a higher healing percentage, or healing per second, post-patch from the ultimate only, than she did before. I think it works out as like 72 healing per second, even if she takes the DPS passive. So, arguably when she ults, she's going to be really hard to kill. The only problem is, and this is the big issue, it's kind of hard to get value from this ult. There's a lot of cleanses in the game right now. If she gets hindered or anywhere CC'd, it just cancels the ult outright. It's one of the ults that is really, really easy to play around. So, because of the existence of cleanse, because of the existence of CCs, I think overall the DPS passive is going to be a huge net nerf to the Adrenaline Rush. And I think as a result, Junker Queen is going to feel pretty bad now. She's going to definitely be easier to kill, I think. The other thing about her, and I mentioned this here, I don't know how a one-shot is going to work now. It's kind of hard to see this as numbers in a vacuum. You're going to have to feel things up a little bit. But I think you're going to be able to one-shot heroes around 250 health because your projectiles are doing... What was it? 80 damage per shot is 10 pellets per shot. The projectile size is bigger on those pellets now, so you're more likely to hit some of those into headshots. But equally, you're not going to hit all of them from a distance, right? Because normally you would knife someone, pull them back, you would shoot them on the pull, and then you would axe them at the end of it. That was the full combo, and it killed... I think every squish in the game died to it. So you're going to probably do more crit damage than before, but because every hero is getting such a big health increase, your damage to your gun isn't increasing, and the wounds also aren't increasing, nor is the knife damage itself or the axe damage. It's just the ult again. I think you will struggle to get the one-shot, and I think without the potential for a one-shot on a squishy hero via Junker Queen's knife, shot, axe combo, again, I think this will just kill the hero. So I think overall this is going to be a net nerf, but it really does hinge on this. If she can still one-shot people because the projectile size allows her to get more headshots on the, the pull, and she is killing, the 215, especially kills the 300 health targets, then she will still be played. She'll still be played as much. So it'll work out as basically an all-even-ish patch. She still has the threat of the knife one-shot combo. She hasn't got as much sustain, not in her ult, but when she ults, she has more sustain. So it'll be there or thereabouts. But I think, again, gut feeling, it's going to be a general nerf to Junker Queen. Speaking of nerfs, Mauga, I don't even need to go into this too much. Huge nerf. humongous nerf. He gets 100 health, by the way. This might be the biggest health gain of any hero in the game. I don't think anyone else gets above 100. Maybe there's another hero that does get 100, but... problem with Malga, his biggest thing about the hero, what makes him playable, is Cardiac Overdrive. It is by far and away the most important aspect of his kit. It's also what synergizes with other heroes as well, because if you Cardiac Overdrive and you're running that with like a Bastion or something, giving Bastion 60% lifesteal is kind of broken, I'm not going to lie. Giving Reaper an additional 60% lifesteal, pretty damn good! But now the lifesteal is going to be 20% less on the Cardiac Overdrive, and as we've seen when they've pulled back these numbers for Malga so he doesn't get as much lifesteal, the hero just takes a huge nosedive. That's pretty one-dimensional. They've also not changed his damage number, so his time to kill is going to be longer than it was before. He's not going to have as much sustain as he was before. DPSs will just be able to, shoot him and kill him through the cage. I just don't see a world where Malga is played. It's just such a huge nerf to the character. But maybe it ends up being a point that the health pools are so big that Malga plus Bastion, aka 2 Bastions, is enough damage to just shred people, and you'll just have these cycles where your kit, your power level, is really low, and then your Bastion forms a new Cardiac Overdrive, and your fucking power level goes actually through the roof of the graph, and through the roof of the screen, but it only lasts for however long Cardiac Overdrive is, or till the enemy team, eventually they escape from it, and then you just drop all the way back down again. But for like 1 second, you're just like God mode. Maybe that is good enough versus some comps. Maybe that's good enough versus like a rush comp. I suspect it isn't though. Anyway, Orisa. She has got 75 more armor. The Battle Cattle is even more unkillable. Not health, armor. Had to be armor, of course. She has a nice thing though. She got recently a she got 0 damage drop off on Orisa. The projectile size increases therefore mean that she's more likely to hit headshots from a distance, which means she's going to be more likely to pump out really high damage numbers at a distance. However, her raw damage numbers didn't go up, including on her ultimate, and her ultimate was already pretty difficult to secure kills in. It's even going to be harder now. All the key things about Orisa are that her javelin size was unimpacted. It's one of these larger projectiles, so that's not going to be any easier to hit than before. Other things I've not really mentioned here, I talk about this more as I get further on in the patch notes. I bring it up and then, I let it go. Because it's a kind of a core... I think it's a core thought process. If you're picking a hero in the game now and you're trying to decide if they're good or not, it's how does the projectile size help your hero versus how it hinders your hero. Like, how other heroes do against you. For Orisa, she was already a chunky, slow hero. So everyone else getting a projectile size increase versus her is not a huge difference, right? Especially since she's gaining armor, so she's still going to be really hard to kill. However, it was a bit more awkward to hit Orisa's projectiles. It wasn't, the hardest thing to hit. But I think overall this difference in projectile size will benefit Orisa more than it will harm her. But as I said, it's Orisa. I think she's just basically going to be a sidestep character. I don't think she's going to be much stronger than she is currently in the meta. I don't think she's going to be significantly weaker than she is in the meta. Yeah, that's about it. And also, I say, from a distance, it's going to be easy to get these like scummy headshots. You just melt someone down from a distance. But the health pool increases mean that it's going to be less likely for you to headshot people during, moving across from point to point, right? Like these transitional periods, she just won't get those magic picks anymore. And that is a general consensus of the game, as I said. The patch is really designed to hurt any amount of huge burst damage that's not going to be as frequently anymore. But at the same time, you're going to be able to consistently do more damage, and you can't heal that damage off as easily as before. It's a really big change in the way the game is going to be played. So I'm really interested to see how that is going to pan out eventually. Alright, Ramattra. Ramattra right now is in a pretty good spot. I'd say he's one of the better tanks out there, if not the best tank out there right now. At least he's a really good, catch-all tank, very good for rush. You can play him a little bit in poke, he's okay. He only got a health increase, not armor, health. And what's important about Ram is, again, no damage changes on weapons, no changes on the Nemesis form, no changes on ultimate. However, There's no specification here that his health on the change on the ultimate, his Nemesis form actually does anything, right? Actually, you know what? Let me just check this one more time. Let me just check. It's not a percentage increase, right? Where are you, Ram? Is it a set amount? Yeah, he gets plus 225 armor, so respectively, it's a huge nerf on Nemesis form. Like, it's moving his power level away from Nemesis form towards this Omnic form, because the staff projectile size was buffed quite a lot, and that also has no damage drop-off, so you're going to beam people down from a distance with Ramatra, but he's going to be, or at least he's going to feel a little bit less survivable in his Nemesis form, and he's not going to do as much damage in the Nemesis form, so I don't know. We'll see overall. Again, this is another hero that is easy to put the DPS passive on. He does have a shield, but it's not really the most consistent shield in the game. You put it down, you can't move it, and it comes up again in like, whatever it is, 13 seconds is it the cooldown? It's a long cooldown regardless. Normally you play in cross-armed block mode, which makes you almost now unkillable, but now you might actually be killable. It's like, again, let me check the actual numbers before I get called out on this. It's so insane, the block. It's like 90%, is it? 75%, okay, not 90%. But 75% damage reduction is huge, right? But part of the reason why it was huge was that a support could pocket you at the same time and actually heal you back up through 3 people shooting at you. Now with the DPS passive, you're probably not going to be able to get healed back up through block if you're hard target focused. So I think you are going to generally have a worse time as Ramatra through these patch notes. So I think overall the patch notes are a nerf to Ram. The other thing I'm going to say about this one, and we're going to get into it in a moment, is that Reinhardt, I think, is going to get giga buffed. And typically you run Ramatra as a rush tank, and if his, competitive rush tank Reinhardt gets buffed, as a result of that, if Ramatra gets weaker, he's probably going to drop down and get, further weaker, right? As you just won't have a reason to play him over the Rein. Well, let's get to good old Reinhardt himself. And let me scroll this window up a little bit. So, Reinhardt, he is getting 50 more health. He's getting 25 more armor. So, net total 75, but he does get some more of it as the good stuff. His swings do 100 damage up from 85. That is an increase of 18%, which is pretty close to the health pool increases on characters. Charge is going up by 22%. Again, this is close to the health pool changes, so this keeps the breakpoints very similar. Reinhardt can charge and kill most of the squishies in the roster. There are some 300 health squishies like Torbjorn and Mei, who he can't kill with charge, but I think that was true before the patch, right? So it just keeps everything consistent. The Rocket Hammer now means that he's going to kill people in 3 swings, which is very similar to how it was before. So unlike a lot of the other heroes in the roster, who I will say got the health increases, but they didn't get damage increases to keep them in equivalent breakpoints as before, Ryan did get them. So Ryan his like respective power level for fighting and brawling is going to be pretty similar before the patch and then after the patch. Unlike a lot of the heroes where they're going to drop slightly. Therefore, in general, this is going to be a buff to Ryan. Now, it's actually a giga buff when you really think about it, because the DPS passive, I think, is going to be humongous, right? I think the projectile size increases is going to be pretty humongous. I should also mention that the Fire Strike isn't affected by the projectile size increases. I don't know why I'm drawing over it, but it's not. If the DPS passive does become this insane thing, and it takes 2 seconds for it to wear off, having a shield is going to be huge. Having a shield to put in front of your teammates and yourself to protect you from DPS is going to allow you to cleanse the DPS passive, or at least, it's going to allow your healers to heal during that, downtime, that really horrible phase where your burst healing is not as good. And then when it goes back into, happy mode, you can actually, top them off fully. I think this is going to be monumentally huge. I think any hero that has a form of shielding or hard damage mitigation, and I did say I was a bit lower on the old Diva scale. I'm mainly low on the Diva scale because I think Reinhardt and Sigma will do this better than Diva. It's not to say that, I think Diva is terrible at it, but I just think there are other characters that are better at it. I'd also maybe include Winston into that, but we'll talk about Winston in a bit. But anyway, I think these shields are going to be so huge. And as a result of this, and another character who's pretty good at mitigating the DPS passive is Mei, and another hero that gets Giga buff, we'll get into it later, is Lucio, I think Rush stonks are going to go through the roof. If you're an EU player, especially where Rush is already, you know, at the worst of times, Rush was like meta. I think Rush now is going to be so strong compared to some of the other comp types. And more specifically, Ryan Rush. You'll be able to protect your teammate from the DPS passive. You're therefore not going to be as affected by the burst healing changes as much. Ryan can cleave through people as well and, you know, have this 3-shot capability. It's going to be really strong. Ryan is going to be in a great spot. There are some slight problems, though. So, shatter damage does not change, nor was the duration of the shatter. Every hero is getting a higher health increase, so therefore it's going to be harder to kill people once you've shattered them. And I think this is true for a lot of ultimates. Same with Graviton Surge, same with the Mei ult. You're going to have to single out one person and make sure you kill that one person. I think it's going to be harder to get a team kill with your ultimate than it was prior to that. So that is a small nerf, but I think overall the positive outweighed the negatives greatly. And I honestly think this is a pretty good change. I think this is one of the big things about the patch, and what I like about it is that some of these fight-winning ultimates, especially from the tank side of things that locked people down, they're no longer going to be guaranteed team kills, right? If you hit this insane shatter, which, you know, you might argue is hard to hit a 5-man shatter. It's hard to hit a 5-man shatter. But even hitting like a 3-man shatter, before you would probably get the kill on all 3 people, now you might only kill 1 or 2 of them. And that means that the 3v5 is more turnable than the 2v5, and hopefully, you know, that leads to some more interesting fights. I will also say the health changes probably mean that fights will last longer. Is that going to be a good thing? I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how the cookie crumbles. Anyway, now to heroes that I think aren't going to be as good again. Roadhog, he got 100 health. Flat out health. As you can imagine now what I'm going to say. Huge hog nerf. The DPS passive kills this hero. Why? Well, they recently buffed his Take a Breather, right? And most of his tankiness, I say most of his tankiness, his survivability comes from Take a Breather, right? He can stand out in the open, take a big face full of damage, do his hook combo, and then step back out and, you know, take a breath and heal back up from it. And it's basically impossible to kill Hog during Take a Breather. Now, if you shoot him with the DPS passive, he heals for 20% less. And if you have 20% less Take a Breather, that is going to increase your kill ability, right? It lowers your survivability. So I think this is going to be a huge nerf to Roadhog. Is that a bad thing? If you're a Roadhog player, it is. If you're anyone else, though, that's probably a good thing. The other aspect of this hero's tankiness, so to speak, and his space creation aspect of the tankiness, is the threat of being hook one-shot comboed, right? You always have to be really careful at where you were. If you were stood out in the open as a squishy hero, this fat little pig guy could step out from behind the corner, hook you into a pig pen, one-shot you, and you're dead, right? It killed all squishies. Now, though, you have more health. Also, the projectile size increases. They probably make the one-shot combo weaker, is my guess, because you hook people pretty close to you. Again, this is something that's going to have to be tested. I don't really know the answer to this. But I suspect that it's not going to make a huge difference to the damage numbers of the one-shot combo. Nor will, obviously, the Pigpen, because the Pigpen is not changed either. Which means, I think, during the hook combo with Pigpen, you're more likely to survive. And any time when Hog has not been able to perform this one-shot combo, Hog has been awful. Like, he lives and dies by the one-shot combo. So, my gut feeling is this hero is going to get pretty killed by this patch. Now, on the flip side of things, the quick melee does go up, and quick melee, obviously, for Hog is better. He gets a 10 extra damage. But I don't think that will make up for the increase of, 50, 45 health, depending on the hero. Also, what I will say, and I don't think I mentioned it here, he's probably going to be better in these long-range neutral fights where he's just, peppering from a distance. He's going to be more likely to be able to put out consistent damage at a distance. However, I think he won't be as good at doing that as Sigma, for example, who has a shield. So he's basically going to be better in an area of space that Orisa and Sigma occupy. And Hog just won't be able to do it better than those two heroes. So I think overall this is going to be a big nerf to Hog. Again, though, just a clarity, the projectile size increase, and I think this is true for most tanks. It benefits the tank more than it nerfs it. Okay, obviously not the same for Reinhardt because he doesn't have much of a projectile. But Hog will be easy to hit shots with. He was already big enough anyway, so he took a lot of damage regardless, irrespective of the projectile sizes. So that will be that. All right, Sigma. I think this is the other tank who's going to get pretty big buff. But I don't necessarily think he alone gets the huge buff. It's actually other parts of the kit that I think will be helpful for Sig. So he gets 75 more shields, by the way. It's not health, so this is the recoverable health pool that if you don't take damage for... I can't remember what it is on barriers. Is it 2 seconds and you get to recover it? And I believe that will work in conjunction with the general support... No, the general health passive, sorry. So Sigma, if he gets out of battle, will just heal to full pretty quickly, honestly. Which is nice, because again, you can use your shielding to maybe... Again, it depends how much damage you take. You might be able to use your shielding to get behind cover, to then make sure that the DPS proc goes off, it wears away, to get this self-healing, to get this barrier healing, and then you can come back into the fight again with a recharge shield and recharge health. I think that's Sigma's going to be very good at that. I think on maps where Poke was good before, Sigma will still be the tank to play. Yeah, that's about it. Also for the DPS passive mitigation, he can eat things along with shielding them. So you think, you know, aha, he takes 20% less healing, and then he just starts sucking up anything for... I don't know how long does suck last for Sigma? It's not... Maybe it is 2 seconds. How long is a suck? Sigma, how long? How good are your lungs, baby? Your hand lungs. Kinetic grasp. It is 2 seconds, okay. So you can definitely make the DPS passive fall off you, assuming, again, the DPS aren't shooting you from, like, 90-degree angles where you can't suck both things up. Typically, Sigma is played on, you know, maps where there is one big, long sightline, right? So he probably won't get stuck in that situation that often. Other key aspect, his damage numbers don't increase. His primary fire was already hard to hit, and I don't know if the projectile size buff is going to be that big on the orbs. I don't know where it falls into the category of all these orbs. It's pretty slow moving, so maybe it gets a pretty big buff, so it's going to be easier to hit, so he does more damage. I think, though, in general, his time to kill is going to be reduced. I still think it's going to be really hard to hit these orbs. Heroes are going to get more health, and you're just going to be poking a lot with Sigma. You're kind of going to be enabling your other members of your team, right, rather than securing the kills. Oh, God, I nearly forgot about it. Other big reasons to playing Sigma, other big reasons for Sigma buff. A lot of ultimates in the game haven't had any of their damage numbers changed, which is good for Sigma because his is a percentile. He does percentile damage. So increasing the health pool of characters doesn't affect his ult, other than the takeoff damage, which is like 50 damage right on the lift-off. They still take this flat percentage damage at the end when they get slammed into the ground, so Sigma is going to be really good for, you know, getting all these large health pools reduced, and then you're going to be able to follow up on those kills like before. So I think Sigma is going to get a net positive again, mainly in part because he's not going to be affected by the patch that much, but also he can deny the DPS passive, which is pretty nice. And again, the projectile passive versus Sigma, as opposed to with Sigma, because of the shielding, is not going to be affected that much, right? Sigma is going to get more of a benefit from it than a loss from it. Alright, Winton. Winton gains 50 armor, which is pretty big. He'll get 25 health on top of that. But the 50 armor is going to make him very, very survivable, right? His Tesla cannon damage is going up. It's an extra 25%. This is similar to the health pool increases, so it's kind of, you know, keeping in tow with the rest of the heroes in the game. Also, the punch damage in Primal Rage is going up from 40 to 50. Again, this is pretty consistent with the quick melee damage, which was 30 before, and when he goes into Primal Rage, he does like 10 plus quick damage. He's now doing 10 plus quick damage again, but it means this number is 50 and not 40 now, so it's basically a consistency change. However, and I don't like the Winston changes as much as other heroes, which, by the way, I think will net out as... I think it's going to net out as about a neutral, maybe slight nerf But there's going to be some other rewards because of the other heroes that synergize with Winston getting huge buffs. One of the big things about it is his booty cheek slam, when he lands on people, that hasn't been increased, nor has his alt fire. They do the same damage they did before. And these made up like a big part of his high skill aspect on his kit, where you would try and land on someone, Tesla cannon them with the right click during the mid-flight, land on them, you would, shoot them with your primary fire quick melee, and you can explode someone. And that was really, 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 really hard to do. And now it's going to be impossible to do, I think, because your hero's getting like 50 plus health, your booty cheek damage didn't go up, your alt fire damage didn't go up. So it's going to be less of a reward for trying to do that, And instead the primary fire went up, so the lower skill aspects of the kit got buffed. I feel a little bit bad about that. And also I think this is going to be a general, even though Primal Rage got this plus 10 on punches, I think it's going to be a nerf to Primal Rage as well, because the slam damage on the Primal Rage was also a pretty big aspect of the damage, and it not going up with the health pools, I think will mean that net overall, you're going to be doing less damage on Primal Rages. So, and again, Primal Rage I really like as an ultimate. It's an extremely high skill ultimate, probably the highest skill ultimate in the game, in fact. It's so hard to get value from it. If you watch these insane Korean and I guess Chinese Winstons, in the case of Gushwei and Fearless and Someone, their Primal Rages are like blades. They are so scary. I was watching a little bit of Funny Astro like 2 or 3 days ago when he was talking about some of his time at Gladiators, and they said they got to the point where they were playing against Dive, and I think it was Fearless, was every time there was a Primal Rage, he would kill someone. Every single time, without fail. And eventually they decided that anytime they played against like these top Korean Winstons, they would beat Primal Rage. They saw it as like one of these big, high damaging ultimates. Whereas I think for a lot of people, the Primal Rage is used as a gain health, survivability tool. Plus, a bit of, knocking people around, disruption, a bit of damage as well. They could really, though, get the damage aspect and pull it out of the kit. By the way, I don't think I mentioned this again on here, that Primal Rage, he doesn't get an increased health pool with Primal Rage. So it still goes to like 1,000, I think. Don't quote me on this one. Let me check. Does it just set you to 1,000? Where are you, Primal? Oh no, it's plus 500 max health, I'm wrong. So it does integrate into the Primal Rage. Okay, never mind, that's fine then. I was smarter before when I wrote these documents, apparently. So you do get the health increase effectively then because of the base character. Okay. By the way, the quick melee as well, the buff, is pretty good for Winston. Winston often would weave melee attacks in with his Tesla cannon shots just to make the Tesla cannon go a little bit further. An increase of 10 damage. It basically just keeps everything in line, so the quick melees with the Tesla cannon is still a pretty nice thing to do. So, I don't think that's going to be any different. Alright, I was going to say the final tank. The second from last tank, the penultimate tank, Wrecking Ball. He gained 75 armor. Bad hero. Terrible hero. Possibly the weakest state. And I was thinking about this the other day. Has there ever been a tank in a worse state than Wrecking Ball is right now? Going into this patch. And I'm not sure that has been. I know people will say Roadhog. And Roadhog has been pretty bad for the most part. But even then, there were these like very niche situations where you would Roadhog out of spawn to try and hook someone to get a kill, an early pick. Gibraltar first is the obvious example. Wrecking Ball doesn't even have that, right? It has nothing. So, he's going to be very, very hard to kill, don't get me wrong. He has 75 extra armor. Also, he's not as affected by the projectile size change as most heroes, because in ball form, he can't be crit. And one of the big things about the projectile size increase is it makes headshots easier to hit. Therefore, Wrecking Ball won't get headshot as much as other characters because he doesn't have a headshot hitboxer most of the time compared to other characters, excluding Malga, who can crit you in ball form. So that's nice. And also the projectile sizes are really good for the Wrecking Ball guns, right? Because one of the weak aspects of Wrecking Ball is that he does pump out a lot of damage on his guns. It's just hard to pump out the damage, right? It's hard to aim with it. And that's going to be easier now than before. So maybe it's going to be fine, but I think his time to kill is going to be so ludicrously low, which is one of the issues right now, that I think it's just only going to get worse with everyone else getting huge health pools. Like, I just think there's some heroes that Wrecking Ball, like Wrecking Ball versus Lifeweaver. How the fuck are you going to kill Lifeweaver? I know, like, he heals through his dashes and stuff, and the DPS passive will take some of that health off, but you're just going to be chasing people around the map, not killing them. That's what I think it's going to feel like as Wrecking Ball. Now, I do think that part of the reason this is the case is there's a rework on the horizon for Wrecking Ball. I believe they touted it as Season 10, so I think they kind of just... they shrugged their shoulders with Wrecking Ball and were like, we'll give you 75 health, and then we'll deal with you later. Season 9 will not be your season, but look out for Season 10. And I really think that is the case. I think they've just shrugged their shoulders and forgot about this hero. And I will say that about one of the DPS heroes as well, where I think, and there's no rework mentioned yet, but I think they've kind of just decided to forget about them. One thing I didn't mention, again, an upside to playing Ball probably, is I assume the mine sizes are going to be increased, right? I assume they're going to count as a projectile, but I'm not 100% certain on that. If the mine size diameter is increased, it's more likely that you can get these combos where you bounce them from one mine to another one, which will mean your ult is better. But building your ult is going to be harder. Well, it's going to be pretty hard. You're basically going to be doing nothing until you ult, and you might ult to kill one person. And that probably isn't going to be worth it, right? The juice will not be worth the squeeze. And now we come to the final tank. We have Zarya. Zarya is getting 75 more health, not barriers health. She's also getting a beam size increase on the width. This is true for most of the beam characters, and again, I think this is meant to toe the line with the projectile size users to also bring them up so it's easier to put out damage. Key things for Zarya. Her bubble allows for the time for the DPS passive to pass. I think the bubble lasts for 2 seconds. The DPS passive is, you take less healing for 2 seconds. So bubble can effectively cleanse the DPS passive, which is pretty nice, right? I think the beam width change is pretty minor. I don't think it's going to result in a situation where you're hitting beams that you weren't hitting before. You're going to be hitting multiple people with a beam, whereas you weren't before. Obviously, it is a buff. It will happen, but it's going to be pretty minor. The hero received no damage changes, no ult duration changes, so it's going to be harder to kill people in Graviton Surges. It's going to be harder just to kill people full stop. However, maybe the projectile size increase is going to work in 2 different ways for her. It's going to be easier to get charged by bubbling and people accidentally shooting the bubble. And also, she might be able to do more damage now right-clicking. You used to say, you would left-click with the beam for kills, and you would right-click for ult charge, right? If you could get big Zarya right-clicks into a big group of people, that really, that put your ult charge through the roof. And at the end of the day, Zarya's building Gravs pretty quickly. She's always going to be a good tank, right? Grav is a very strong ult. This projectile size might let her build charge faster, and the right clicks might do more damage because they're going to be bigger, which means the splash will go out further. So maybe she builds ults faster than she did before, respective to the rest of the cast. But I think because her ultimate is going to be pretty weak, she might see play here or there, some niche use cases. I think if you're a Zarya main, you'll probably be able to make Zarya work still, right? But I don't think she gets a big up. I think she gets she's kind of the same, right? She's going to fill the same role as before, and she's going to do it pretty similarly well. Anyway, that is all the tanks. Now we get to the key, one of the key markets, the DPS themselves. Why do I say this is one of the key markets? Because the DPS heroes, their identity is to pump out damage, right? So the projectile size increases should affect them. I was going to say more, but I guess it is more. And I mean both as a positive and a negative, because some heroes are going to be easier to hit than they were before, and some heroes don't really care. They were equally as easy to hit before, or there or thereabouts, but we'll be able to put out that damage better than they did before. And also the ease by which they can put out the DPS passive is going to be a key aspect. And we immediately get into one of them. I think it's going to be kind of the sleeper surprise hero, and that is Ashe. So Ashe is getting 50 health on board. She's getting up bob damage. Do I put it as a percentage here? 21% increased Bob damage, which is, again, kind of in line with the health increases of other heroes. Now, why am I kind of efficient? Good spelling, me. Why am I kind of worried about Ashe? And I say worried, I think she's going to be very strong. Basically, her dynamite is going to be an AoE way of applying the DPS passive. Now, I talked about in the tanks, I thought Ryan was going to be very strong. I thought Rush comps will be strong. I still do. I think if you're playing a poke comp against Rush, you are probably going to try and slot Ashe into that comp. If you hit a full Rush comp as they're transitioning with a dynamite, they burn for 5 seconds, I think it is. And then 2 seconds after that, they will still have the DPS passive. So for 7 seconds, they have 20% less healing. And then bearing in mind that burst healing is going to be down and the dynamite is a big burst as well on top of the tick damage, if you hit them with this dynamite and then just, even if it's with dive, you might even run these hybrid dive comps where you run like Ashe, Tracer, Winston, you hit a huge dynamite, you just dive like a BAP or something, the BAP will not be able to sustain himself. It just won't happen. And whoever they dive, they will kill that hero. There is no two ways about it. That is going to be super, super, super scary for your Rush Deathwall comp. So I think this will give Ashe a niche that she will be very good into Rush. And I really like that. I think that's a good change and a good overall result of the patch. Just as a side note, if you're low skill like me, smiley face, it's easy to hit the dynamite now. The dynamite, because your projectile size is bigger, the dynamite's easy to hit. So it's easy to apply this burn, which is then also applying the DPS passive. One big downside, though, for Ashe, she can't one-shot Tracer anymore. One of her nice things was that if Tracer did try to, harass her, if she just turned around, 180 flick headshot her, it would kill her, right? You had to be a little bit cautious of the Tracer. Now Tracer can play with a bit more freedom. She has 175 health, we'll get to that in a moment. But Ashe's weapon damage didn't go up, so I think her weapon damage was is it 150 exactly? It was the exact damage to kill the Tracer. It doesn't get there anymore, so that's going to be a bit of a weakness for Ashe. She's going to need help dealing with any flankers out there. She's also got a pretty good affinity for this general health passive. So the general health passive, which is you don't take damage for 5 seconds, you get 20 health per second. The best heroes that utilize this will be heroes that don't want to be in fights or can disengage a fight easily. I think it's going to be good for flankers and long-range hit scan heroes, or just long-range heroes full stop. Ashe isn't as long range as someone like a Widowmaker or even maybe a Hanzo, but she's still going to play pretty far away from fights. She can coach gun away from people as well to disengage. So I think in general, compared to the other cast, she's going to have a really good use of the health passive. And then again, the Bob damage is going to be pretty nice. Bob also applies the DPS passive, by the way, so that's even scarier. But Bob himself isn't getting a health buff from what I'm aware, so he might be a little bit more susceptible to being burnt down by some heroes. We'll see. I think Ashe is going to be low-key, though. Maybe not meta, but on certain situations, if you're a team comp that don't want to play Rush, and you get something like King's Row, I could 100% see people playing an Ashe dive and an Ashe poke comp, and just ruin the day of the Rush comp. I can definitely see that, and I think that's a really good niche for Ashe to be in. I'm happy with this changes. I think the patch notes really, really, really are good for Ashe. Hero it's not good for, Bastion. Fucking Bastion is just rip. Bastion has big sad times. He's not happy. He gets 50 health, not armor health. So that's already not great. He doesn't get any damage changes to any part of his kit. Not his primary fire, not his grenade, not his ultimates as well. And that's one of the big things. His ultimate is awful now. They haven't changed any numbers, and it's not affected by the projectile size. I assume he applies the DPS passive, though, so maybe you can argue that you can AoE apply a DPS passive with his ultimate. But you're taking yourself out of the fight to do that. Is that worth it? No. Other heroes can do that way better. Ashe can just shoot a dynamite at them and still keep shooting. So I think Bastion is absolutely just ruined by this patch. I'd also argue that the projectile size increase doesn't really affect Bastion that much. Either way, it was already pretty easy to hit. But typically you were shooting tanks and shields, right? You were just shredding these large health pool targets. That's kind of his niche. So getting more projectile size to, make it easier to shoot tanks doesn't really matter. So it's kind of like the projectile size is who cares? And equally, he's pretty low mobility, so he can't get out of fights and disengage and get the health passive. So I think All these changes basically don't work towards Bastion. They're null or bad. The only thing that happens from this is that they've buffed the nade sights, I believe. I think it's one of the slow-moving large projectiles, which is really just buffing the most frustrating aspect of his kit. So that's... When I was, I was loving life with the Ash changes. The Bastion changes are the complete opposite. It's heartbreak. It's just horrible. They've buffed the worst aspects of him, not really changed anything else. I think Bastion is going to be a big loser this patch, so big down. Alright, Cassidy. No changes to damage, she's getting a flat 50 health again, kind of like Bastion. The only change she gets, though, are changes to Deadeye, and this really just brings it in line with the respective new health pool, so that it charges the full basically as quickly as it did before. That's kind of like the working of this. So his ult wasn't particularly great before. I don't think his ult is going to be particularly great afterwards. His damage thresholds haven't really been changed too much. However, on 300 HP heroes, you don't two-headshot them anymore. Two-shot headshot them. Like May, Reaper, and Torb. So actually, it's a pretty big buff for Reaper into Cassidy that he has to headshot you 2 times and then body shot you once to secure the kill. But, in general, it's going to be way easier for Cassidy to headshot people with the increased projectile size changes. He's one of the heroes that's going to benefit from it more than lose from it. Because, again, he's not the hardest hero to hit. He has the role for damage mitigation. But if you're popping, a tank or, whatever hero for 140 at a time, that's really scary. That's super, super scary. So, I think overall for Cassidy, even with this 300 HP pool break point, I think it's going to be basically a side change for Cassidy. I think he's going to be as good as he was before, in respective to the entire patch. Which is to say that I don't think he's going to be particularly good full stop, but not bad. I think if you're a hard Cass main, you'd be able to play Cassidy, but there's definitely going to be better options in the Cassidy. Speaking of which, I think Echo is going to be reasonably... Actually, Echo's a really weird one. She gets both buffed and nerfed, and it's going to be, which one of these numbers is bigger than the other one, and that's going to be how the game feels by playing it, and also what you're playing into. So the projectile changes are really, really big for Echo. It's pretty hard to, be moving in the air, gliding. What's a thing called, jump jet, or is it not jump jet, but her flight, I think it's just called. Her flight as well, moving around. It's really hard to hit your shots as Echo. Now it's going to be more consistent that you're going to hit your shots. The projectiles are going to be bigger. And also these things are a tri-shot, they come together like this. You might hit more of your tri-shots into head hitboxes now with the projectile size increases. I don't know exactly how that's going to work. So it won't surprise me that Echo just suddenly deletes someone from the skybox. So that's going to be fun, right? She also did get a beam width increase, and she has a duplicate health improvement, which are both nice. The extra 50 health, very nice, brings you kind of in line with the health changes the other tanks get. But bear in mind that not all the tanks got 100 health, most got 75. So you're actually getting, I think, on average, a little bit more than you would have otherwise done as Echo. So I think Ultimate is a pretty big change. The width change on the beam is kind of a, who cares? I don't really care. But the DPS on the beam was so high that actually, when you work all this out, the health changes don't matter too much on the beam damage. It was less than 2 seconds to kill 250 health target before. And now the time to kill is very slightly increased, but it's still less than 2 seconds. You're just going to shred people who are below 50% health. That's going to be, that's going to just be Echo. Other things I mentioned, the sticky splash damage will apply the DPS passive. It's going to be a side effect of it. If you miss with your sticky, as long as you clip them with it, you get the DPS passive, which means they don't get healed as much. So again, if you want to be this death ball comp, a bit like Ash, you might have a bad time fighting into Echo, just because of the splash damage. I've also mentioned here that Echo, she can disengage fights way easier than other heroes. She can just fly away, which means she could probably use this health passive more than other DPS heroes. Now, the big counter, the only reason why I've really got this big red arrow here is this point. I say the projectile size is going to be good for her, it's going to make it easier to hit things. However, unlike almost any other hero in the game, there are a few, but there's a small pool of heroes. a lot of Echo's survivability came from a maneuverability, right? Using like flight and glide to, be really unpredictable in how you got unpredictable movement, which makes you harder to hit, that type of deal. Now with the projectile size increases, it's going to be way harder to hit you in the sky, irrespective of your movement ability. So it's going to be a big nerf. You're going to be way more glass cannoning. You might output a lot of damage, but you're probably going to take more damage in flight. And as a result, you probably don't want to stay in the sky quite as often as you were before. And again, you're going to have to play around cover in the skybox. So I think overall, it's going to be like the slightest buff. I think the buffs will outweigh the negatives, but not by a lot. So I think, again, gut feeling Echo kind of similar, right? She's going to be a little bit more killy. I think the thing that swings is an extra 50 health on the ultimate. She's going to be a little bit more survivable in the ultimate now, so she's more likely to build an ult from her ult. And depending on which hero you copy, which again depends on the team comps you're going into, and again, it really affects how big the magnitude of these arrows are. If you're going into like double hit scan, then obviously you're going to have a really shit time. If you're going into rush, you're going to have a really happy time. So yeah, it's going to depend on who you can copy as well to how good that is. So basically, I think it's going to be slight positive, but probably a sidestep for the most part. Genji, I think, is one of the big winners of this patch. And I think it's also a big winner in terms of not just the quality of the hero, but the playstyle of the hero that's going to be rewarded from these changes. So, again, this is like, it's such a small thing, but it's the projectiles, it's more than just the 50 health. It's the projectile size changes and the projectile size changes, let's be honest. It's the projectile size changes times 2. Very good for Genji. But also this change. So the swing recovery has been decreased from 0.9 to 0.7 seconds. Genji Dragon Blades for 6 seconds, which means if you just keep swinging, it actually gives you an extra 2 swings per Dragon Blade. Obviously, you're not just swinging like a madman all the time with the weeb stick out. But sometimes you will just swing madly with the weeb stick out, and 2 additional swings in Dragon Blade might secure you more single target kills. That's obviously a big a big buff. If my quick maths with an F is right, I think he's getting the 2 additional swings per blade, which, as I said, is a huge buff. He can, again, disengage pretty readily. He can wall climb, he can dash, he can deflect, which means he can make the most of this health pool increase if he stays out the fight for 5 seconds. The big thing, though, is this, and this raises his skill ceiling in his neutral form, i.e. not using his ultimate. People would accuse Genji, and I guess I do to some degree, that he can be played as a bit of a blade bot style of things. There's different Genji. Some of them play pretty frontline and try and secure additional kills, which is dangerous because you're putting yourself more in combat than others. Some Genjis will sit at the back of the map and will just throw shurikens at the tank from a distance to build up a blade as quickly as possible. And then they will just go for blade kills, right? And it really is like, it depends what fort, like what house of fort you're in, whether or not one of them is better than the other one. Sometimes the meta would probably dictate that. But now, the neutral side of things has got a big buff because the right-click shurikens, the projectile sizes increase, and it's pretty monstrous on the right-click. Because one of the things you used to have to do was you would dash into someone, slash them, and then right-click at the head hitbox. And that does a lot of damage. Now, if you do that and you hit all 3 of them as headshots, which is going to be more likely because of the projectile size increases, and you're very close to the hero anyway because you're dashing on them, and quick melee got increased by 40, you're doing 252 damage in this combo, i.e., you can one-shot some squishy heroes by dashing on them, this is from full health, dashing on them, turning and slicing them, and then right-clicking them. It is super dangerous to do this as the Genji because you're using one of your movement abilities to basically just int into the enemy team. But if you get the kill, you're rewarded with a dash reset and you can, escape from the fight again. So this is a huge increase in the skill ceiling and your decision making in your neutral form. This makes me very happy. This is a really positive change for Genji. Very good change from the devs. Like, people call out the devs a lot, and I think I'm not as critical as others have been on it, but sometimes I'm like, what the fuck are you saying, okay? Can you at least, look through your notes before you say them? Because sometimes you say something opposite of what you said earlier. But I think overall this patch note is so good for Genji for the changes that it makes him strong in both blade form, but not necessarily with... I mean, he's still going to be good with a charge, right? Like a boost on it, like nano boost or the Mercy blade, but just having a neutral form where if you're an aggressive neutral Genji and you get really good at these skill shots, you're going to be so scary. Like, you're going to be able to climb into the highest of highest ranks. Like, you're going to be able to separate yourself from the blade bot Genjis, right? And even the blade bot Genjis do still get something, right? They're going to get more swings for their blade, so it kind of rewards both aspects of it. Now, if you hate Genji, obviously this patch is going to be big sad for you. I don't hate Genji. I don't love Genji either, but I like the direction of the making this dash, right-click, slash combo stronger, right? I think that is a good thing to do. So I think overall the patch notes are a big buff for Genji. I think Genji will be pretty decent. Now, the other thing I've not really mentioned yet, applying the DPS passive, most heroes have to shoot someone, right? Not many heroes can mitigate, like, the shields, though, right? I mentioned that Ryan can just put his shield up there and stop damage incoming. Genji's dash, though, is piercing. It will go through shields. So Genji can actually, unlike all other heroes, he can maybe dash to secure a kill, and in doing so, dash through a tank and put the DPS passive on another hero. So I think Genji is going to be really scary. If you're playing a rush comp, I could definitely see a world where you maybe drop a... And you want to play dive. I think I could see a world where you'd play Sombra, and we'll get to Sombra in a moment. Sombra, Genji, dive, and you lower someone's health pool with, like, you know, a fire strike, a Winston leap onto a target, you dash through the team, you apply this DPS passive to everyone, they can't sustain through it anymore, and you just clean up from there. And you get, like, dash reset after dash reset. I think there's going to be some really flashy Genji plays. So, we'll see, though. Downsides for this, though, he didn't get any raw damage number changes flat out, so his ult will build probably more slowly than it used to. But, counterpoint again, good in the neutral, so I think that is a fair enough change. Also, downside to Genji, sorry. This is another, you know, down, but again, I think this is going to be a big positive, slight downsize. Any hero, as I said, who has more of a mobility tool to mitigate damage is going to be affected more negatively by the projectile size increases, so I think that's going to be definitely true for Genji. You're going to be way easier to hit when you're using your movement abilities like your double jump, your wall climb, your dash. So you'll probably take more damage, which again, it's very good with this neutral style, right? If you're going to be close to the fight, which you need to be for this neutral one-shot kill people, it puts you in the line of fire more. You're playing a riskier game, a riskier decision-making game. So good Genjis are going to get rewarded with good movement ability, good positional sense, whereas worse Genjis will get punished for this, right? So I think overall the changes to Genji are superb. Very big tick. Alright, Hanzo, we go down to the sad times again. And not sad times because I think the hero is going to be bad, but sad times because I don't like playing against the hero. Hanzo can't one-shot anymore, that's the big news. His primary fire damage wasn't increased, the health pools have been increased. He was very close to the breakpoint of, you know, being able to kill by one-shot headshots to the squishies. He can't do it anymore, right? He gets 50 health as well, not more than that. It's pretty consistent for the DPS to get 50 health. In fact, I don't think there's a DPS that doesn't get 50 health, or like a combination of 50 health. Oh, other than Tracer, who gets 25 because she was a 150 health hero to begin with. So yeah, he can't one-shot with the projectile size. With the damage numbers, he can't one-shot. However, and I put a big here, the projectile size increase affects Hanzo a lot, and honestly, he gets a huge boon from the projectile size. He's going to be hitting more headshots than he was before, so even though they're not one-shotting, he's going to be chunking you down, like, you're going to walk through you're going to try and move, you know, across from cover to cover. Hanzo is going to log you, he's going to put you onto, like, I don't know what it works out as, like 30 or 40 health, depending what hero you are, there or thereabouts, and you're going to get clipped by some other little bit of damage, and you're just going to fall over, right? That other bit of damage may also be the Storm Arrows. Why? Why? Big why? Why? Stop buffing Storm Arrows! They've buffed it again. They can't help themselves. He's a sniper with one of the best shredding health abilities in the game. It makes no fucking sense, but they've done it again. So storm arrows now do 15% increased damage, which isn't quite in line with the health pool increases, but, you know, it's there or thereabouts. However, the cooldown is reduced by 20%. Why? Why? Why have you done this? So, one of my gripes with Hanzo, and what I really hate about the hero, is that he is a sniper, i.e., you want to play at long range, right? The weakness of snipers, they play at long range. If you close the gap to them, they're meant to be kind of doo-doo, right? Hanzo, on the other hand, if you close the range to Hanzo, he breaks out the storm arrows and just absolutely obliterates you. 75 fucking damage per arrow. It's 5 arrows, right? Storm arrow? Let me just check this before I enrage the Hanzo player base. Where are you? It's 5 or 6. I'm pretty sure it's 5 storm arrows. Yeah, it's 5. So, on a headshot, and bearing in mind it's easy to hit these fucking things now, on a headshot he's doing 150 damage per storm arrow. So that works out as quick maths. Is it 750 damage? Hey, that's funnily enough like the tank health pool, right? And tanks normally have bigger headshot hitboxes than other heroes. It also means he's going to shred shields pretty goddamn quickly, right? Without the crit, it's just 5 times 75, right? So 450. This hero can push E and do 450 damage to your shield. He will shield break most heroes, and that's going to be his role now. He will sit at the back of the map throwing logs. He will accidentally get headshots every now and again, and it will result in a kill. He's not going to be particularly good at applying the DPS passive, because he's like a single shot character. In fact, it's going to be pretty weak compared to other ones. But if you walk around with Big Shield Boy, he's going to melt you. Big Rectangle Man will not like this, especially this part of it. This bit, sad. This bit, very sad. I really hate it. I really hate it. I hate that is his playstyle. I think it's so unhealthy for a sniper to be able to do this. I know that, you know, way back when he had Scatter Arrow, not Storm Arrow, I thought Scatter Arrow was stupid, that you would fire it into the ground and one-shot tanks. The premise of the Scatter Arrow, though, was fine. The premise of Scatter Arrow was that you would hit someone with an arrow from Hanzo, they would step behind cover, and you would shoot the Scatter Arrow into, like, a doorway, and it would bounce around the walls and finish off kills. It was meant to be for kill securing. These fucking bouncy arrows aren't for kill securing. These are just for killing. They're going to be monstrous. So monstrous. Other weird things about this is that his ult wasn't particularly good before, and they haven't changed his damage numbers on his ult, so can you imagine all the times where on Hanzo's Dragon you've just snuck out of the ult, right? You've lived on like 20 or 30 health. You now have more health than you did before. You're going to be living on like 100 health instead when you get out the Dragon. So I think generally, unless you're combining the ultimate with something else, it's really just going to be used for aerial denial now. You're probably not going to pick up too many kills with it. I'd also say they can use the health passes more because they're a sniper. They're probably not going to be in the center of battles, although if they do get into the center of battle, good luck with that. So they're probably going to use the general health passes more than other heroes. That is my gut feeling. So I think Hanzo is going to feel, as much as people have said this, that, you know, hooray, we've got rid of one-shots on Hanzo, we're not going to get logged as much anymore. The projectile silence on Hanzo before was like this. It's now going to be like this. They are actually going to be truly logs being fired by Hanzo now. Not quite as damaging logs as these ones, but they are still going to be logs. I think overall this is a net buff to Hanzo. Not a huge buff, but it's going to be a buff. And it's going to feel really, really obnoxious to play against this hero. But no one-shot, so, you know, all well that ends well, right? Right? Oh my god, Junkrat. What have you done to my boy? I mentioned Wrecking Ball as being the weakest tank compared to the other tanks in the history of the game. After these changes, Junkrat might be the weakest DPS has ever been in this game. He has got murdered, so his projectile size has been... Okay, so this is not very clear on the patch notes if you're not aware of this. His projectile size is reduced, but this is the reduction of what it is now. The global buff that is applied, which was above in the patch notes, will be applied to this point too. So effectively, he is going to get a projectile size increase. It's just not going to be as big as other heroes, right? And Junkrat has a pretty big projectile size full stop, so basically, he's not going to get a lot of bang for his buck on the projectile size aspect of things. It's going to feel very similar than what it did before. However, they changed none of his damage numbers. Nothing. Tire didn't get changed, the trap didn't get changed, the pipes didn't get changed, the mines didn't get changed. And now, unlike before where he used to be able to throw a pipe at you and then throw a mine at you and it would just one-shot you because it did 230 damage, it would one-shot all squishies, they haven't changed this. It still does 230 damage. This isn't a one-shot anymore. If you hit someone with a pipe and then a mine directly, of course, for both of them, they're going to live, which means that you're just a spam bot, right? You're going to be spamming corridors and just hoping to get enough chip damage in that someone else finishes off your damage, right? It doesn't reward your playstyle. And I think, again, like Wrecking Ball, the Overwatch team has looked at Junkrat, and I don't have to reworking this character. My gut feeling tells me there is some sort of... There's probably some talks behind the scene that haven't come out yet about Junkrat. But I think they've looked at this area, it's like, what can we change? And they've just gone like, we'll give him some health and then just send him on his way. The only thing I can think about, though, is that maybe the splash damage, maybe, just maybe, he can apply the DPS passive to multiple heroes via the splash of the concussive nades and your pipes, and maybe that is enough to allow other parts of your team to kill secure. But there's surely better heroes than Junkrat doing that. Like, maybe even the Pharaoh rework will be better at it. Surely Ash was better than that. Hell, even the Bastion right click is better than that. So I think Junkrat is going to be a cosmetic DPS. If you're a Junkrat main, good luck for you. I think you're going to need it. I think times are going to be bleak for you. I also actually, you know what, before I did all of this, I should reiterate one thing. The dev team said they're going to closely monitor this patch, as you would expect. More so than any other patch, because it's such a huge, wide-spreading change. So there's definitely a world where some of these changes end up being too strong for a hero, and they'll just tone it back a week or two later. And there might be some heroes which are just unplayably bad, and they'll just pump the numbers up a week from now. So I would take some of this with a pinch of salt. It's just to be aware, on opening day, these heroes are probably going to feel a little bit weaker. These heroes might feel a little bit stronger. These heroes will feel about the same. But it's not to say that if this is your favourite hero that they're going to be dead forever. They will look at this and change it in the future. Anyway, Mei. Mei is pretty strong into Rush right now. She's gained an additional 50 health. That is it. However, her primary fire is a cleave. So it applies the DPS passive in an AoE. It's a close range AoE, but it's an AoE regardless. That's going to be really good against Rush. If you may ice someone, and this is especially going to be strong into Rush comps without a shield, i.e. Remark to Rush, and you hit everyone with this DPS passive, your Moira Ram comps with Reaper are not going to feel anywhere near as survivable as they did before. It's actually a huge change. And it's one of those situations where I think Mei is going to be so good with Rush and against Rush that if Rush is the true meta, you have to play Mei. You just can't not play it, because it's a bit like the same situation with Tracer Brig, where Brig enabled Tracer but also counter Tracer, so you kind of were locked into playing Brigitte, right? I think you'll have that aspect with Mei, Ryan, and Lucio. If the combination is so good against and with it, you'll have to play it, right? It'll just get locked into the team comp. The Snipesicles, as I call it, on the right clicks, by the way, they're going to be even more spooky. They're going to have increased projectile size. And that's going to be like a sniper shot. That is really, really scary. Also, she can cleanse the DPS passive with block. If she goes into block, she'll heal normally because it is a cleanse. So her self-healing is not affected by the DPS passive, unlike almost any other hero in the game. In part because it comes with the cleanse, right? Also, she can use her wall not just to, lock people off. Occasionally she'll wall a window or something so that people can't take damage. She can now wall someone off who is getting fucked by the DPS passive and allow them time to wait 2 seconds to heal it. Don't think that's the best use of the wall. Probably, not, but it's an option, right? Then to get back to this point, a bit like Graviton, a bit like Shatter, enemies in Blizzard are going to be harder to kill because of the health increase. However, because Blizzard does a tick over time, again, this is the same with Graviton Surge, they're going to be harder to keep up as a single person because of the DPS passive. You can't heal that one person up as much, but everyone as a bulk has more health. So I think it's more likely that Blizzard is going to result in a single kill rather than a team kill. Is that a good thing? Probably, right? That's probably good for the competitiveness of fights. But again, this is going to mean fights are going to be more drawn out, they're going to be longer. Is that going to be good for the game? Is that going to be good for the viewership of the game? I don't know. we'll have to see what people end up doing with it. And also say that the passive, but the projectile size changes affect Mei mainly positively than negatively. She was such a waddly, chunky hero before that her getting hit more is really not going to feel that much different to what it is now. However, her right clicks being able to crit hit more frequently is actually scary. She could fight pretty efficiently against people in the longer range categories. There's no drop off in that thing either, right? I don't think Mei has drop off. Let me just check this again before I get called out. But I'm pretty certain they removed it. Or it's insanely long. One of the two, but I think it's removed full stop. Where are you? There you are. Rate of fire, ammo, reload, cast, area, spread, projectile size. Nothing in there that says fall off from what I can see. So I'm going to go with my original assumption that it has no fall off. But yeah, she's going to be able to snipe people. I think overall, again, this somewhat dictates because most people see this game as like, you know, having three main like play styles: rush, dive, and poke. At the end of the day, really, it has two, because rush and dive are kind of the same thing. I know, don't fucking pitchforks, put them down, put the torches down. Rush is really just a horizontal form of dive, and dive is like vertical rush, if you want to call it that way. Both comps want to get close to another comp. It's just dive can do it from like a distance via some setting up, whereas rush literally just runs you down. That's the main difference between the two things. Poke is shooting people from a distance instead, and you have like closely related things to poke, like bunker type comps where you just lock an area down. If rush is really good, Mei will be fantastic. She will be the most picked aspect of it. She's also going to hurt, as I said, this ram rush comp, which is... It was seeing a lot of play in NA at the very least, but I think this is going to like kill it now, because Mei is going to be a hard counter for... it's going to be the hard counter for Moira, Reaper, Ramattra, Rush. So I think that's going to be the case. My actual gut feeling from the entire patch is, and I may end up being proven wrong, and you're going to say, oh, well, Brain of Britain, good work there. I think on maps where Rush was historically good, Rush will be good on. I think maps where historically Dive has only ever like prospered, Dive will be workable on. I think on maps where Poke was more beneficial, Poke will be good. I know, Brain of Britain. The maps where certain comps are good will be... Those comps will be good on. But unlike those situations, there were sometimes, where we had... Goats, for example, was the big one of these, where Goats was played everywhere, even on maps where Dive was better. I don't think we'll have that. I think the patch will actually balance in such a way that all three of these styles will be viable in some way. That's my gut feeling, so we could be proven wrong, we'll see. Anyway, now we get to Pharah, but I don't want to talk about Pharah too much. It's such a big rework on Pharah that it's kind of a big question mark about it if, all of this is going to matter. As a basis, if you're not aware about it, she gets a new ability called Jet Dash, which means that she can move horizontally. It's like a dash in the air. As a compromise to that, though, she can't stay in the skybox as often. She needs to land to regenerate jump jet fuel to go back into the sky. So she's more maneuverable, but she can't just stay at insanely long distances in the skybox anymore like she could before. So again, this is going to depend on how Jet Dash and stuff feels, and I don't think most people have seen it or felt it, so who knows? Who knows about Pharah? Small things, though. She's going to be easy to kill in the air. The projectile size changes is going to impact her more negatively than positively, I think. So... I think it might be harder to play Pharah, especially into double hit scan. And I don't think the Jet Dash ability is going to make up for that. She's going to have a lot of movability, maybe more so than any other hero in the game. Possibly barring Tracer or someone like that. She's going to come from really weird angles and stuff like that. But you're going to chunk her down, right? She's going to be really hard to stay alive. Positives for her, though, she applies the DPS passive as a splash, kind of like Junkrat. So if she's decent, then Junkrat is definitely Giga dead. More dead than before. Also, she can probably disengage because she has 2 movement abilities. Well, actually 3 with Concussive Blast and with the, the rocket shots to blast it into a jump jet to give you more vertical mobility. She's probably going to have to use this health passive more than any other hero. She'll be able to break line of sight, wait 5 seconds, heal up, or get a pack and heal up a little bit while she's doing that. So it is just big question mark on Pharah. I think my gut feeling is Pharah, this will result in a nerf. The other thing about this, and we'll get to Mercy in a moment, that it doesn't really reward Pharah Mercy playstyles as much as it did in the past, so it's a bit of a nerf to that combo wombo, which will affect Mercy more than Pharah will. But I hope Pharah works. I hope she works well on her own. I hope she's not in a state still where she absolutely needs to be running with a Mercy to get like good value from it. But we'll see. All right, we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Okay. Reaper. I think this is a really hard one to call. I can't decide exactly how Reaper is going to be affected by this. So he gets 50 more health. That is just his patch notes. However, the projectile size changes might make Reaper better at killing some heroes despite the fact that they get more health, as it's going to be easier for you to hit headshots. And the spread of your weapon means that more pellets will hit than they did before. So maybe your per shot damage is going to increase, which means your time to kill might decrease, even though there's more health. Or it might break out the same, or it might be slightly slower. I don't know. Right? It's too hard to decide in a vacuum. We'll just have to see it for ourselves, right? Also, his movement ability. I've been mentioning that the projectile sizes typically hinder heroes that have movement abilities more than not, and they use those movement abilities to dodge. But Reaper's makes him intangible, so he can't be hurt. So the projectile size changes don't actually affect him that much. And also during this, he can cleanse the DPS passive off so that he can start lifestealing again. Because obviously, lifesteal for Reaper is brutalized by the DPS passive, right? I don't remember what it is exactly on Reaper. You know what? Let's check it. Is it like 30% right now? They keep changing it. It could be, I think at one point it was like 70%, right? And then they went to like 30 and 60 and 50 and I don't know. Yeah, Winston. Just what I wanted. Maybe it's like 50. Did they decide on that? 35 we're at the Reapening. Okay, 35 is the Reapening. So yeah, taking like 20% effectiveness off that still, he's just not going to lifesteal, right? It's going to feel like nothing. But, as I said, he can cleanse it, so, maybe it'll feel okay. His damage numbers, again, have not been increased, and also his ult isn't a projectile, by the way, so it's not increased by projectile sizes. I actually forgot about this. I caught a bit of Spillo's stream last night, who I think was doing something very similar to this. And someone pointed out that the Death Blossom Ultimate, if you say this is Reaper, the way it works is it just generates like a cone over him, or like a hemisphere over him, and anyone in that area takes damage from the center, so you can shield it off. Equal to I think it's 135 damage per second. But if there's 2 heroes behind this, 2 bolts come out and hit the shield for double the amount. Anyway, that's how Reaper ult works. It's not a projectile, so it's not affected by projectile size increases, which means that you're not going to be getting more crit damage from it. In fact, it's just a fixed damage. So his ult is going to feel pretty bad, I think. I put here at the bottom of it, I think what is going to happen here, I think there's going to be a net neutral on Reaper. I think in situations where Reaper was really good, into close range rush comps, he's still going to be really good. He's going to be pretty strong, right? But any situation that Reaper was bad into, this is going to be a huge nerf to the Reaper guy. So it depends how you feel. Maybe someone like Havoc or any other Reaper main probably has other opinions on this. I don't play a lot of Reaper. But I think when it all comes out in the wash, he'll still be pretty decent into rush comps. Do I think you should run him in a rush comp? I don't know. I don't think so, probably. But he'll be playable in that niche on the ladder. If you get into a situation where people are playing these poke comps at longer range, you're going to have a pretty miserable time as Reaper. That's just my gut feeling, so not a lot of change for Reaper, right? He's going to feel good where he did before and bad where he did before. And that's basically the life of a Reaper. Okay, Sojourn. I heard the party poppers last night when they revealed the changes of Sojourn. She got a health increase and a projectile size decrease on the base amount, but obviously when the global is applied, it will be an increase. But the way I'm going to word this is it's an increase, but not as much as other heroes with equivalent projectile sizes. She can't one-shot with Railgun anymore. They didn't change the Railgun damage, so that is one of her annoying aspects. I saw a little bit of Christy F, the coach of now We Spitfire and formerly of London Spitfire, that he tends to get irked by Sojourn because a lot of the gameplay aspect comes down to your Sojourn hits a headshot, their Sojourn doesn't, or their Sojourn hits a headshot and yours doesn't. And that kind of dictates the fight over some of the movement and the usage and the decision making of cooldowns. So I think it's a good thing that the rail doesn't one-shot anymore. However, and this is a big however, because of the projectile size changes, she is going to build up rails faster, and the railgun size is still increasing, so she's going to pump out a lot of damage. And again, any hero that shoots a lot of shots out, so like, machine gun like fire, which is what Sojourn can do, they can apply DPS passive to multiple targets. Like, they could shoot one person, and then say, like, oh, this person's out of position, you call, like, oh, Sombra out of position, you shoot the Sombra instead. The first guy still, for, like, the additional 2 seconds, has still got that passive on, so your supports are, like, sweating in the back line, going, like, shit, I can't heal this guy, but I need to heal this guy now, and I can't heal this guy either. And you could flip between the targets, so I think Machine Gun Fire is getting a general buff from this patch because of the DPS passive, more so than other shots. Not exclusively that, it's just like a gut general feeling. So I think Sojourn is still going to feel really, really good. And she's going to pump out insane damage numbers. In fact, they're probably going to have to look at this again. Other thing, Disruptor Shot applies the DPS passive as an AoE. That's going to be really obnoxious. It slows you. You take 20% less healing, and you're getting rail shot by Sojourn. You're going to get one shot through that. Like, if she hits the Disruptor Shot and has a rail charge in advance, and then she just headshots you in the Disruptor Shot, you're dead. Even though it's not a one-shot anymore, that combo is going to break most breakpoints. Other than that, though, the damage changes to a kit haven't been made, so swings and roundabouts, but I just think she's going to be building up rails really quickly, and then it's just going to be railing people. Even if it's body shots, it's just going to be outputting so much damage that it's kind of spooky. I will say, though, I think overall the fear of not having the one-shot anymore means that this patch is a slight nerf to Sojourn, but bearing in mind that I think you could argue this, I think Sojourn was the number one best DPS right now. I think it might drop it to like number 3 or something. She's still going to be mental. So if you're a Sojourn enjoyer, I think you're still going to have a good time. Soldiers are very similar to Sojourn. They get 50 health again. They're going to be very efficient at applying the DPS passive to many targets. They get more from the projectile size than lose from them because they don't have a big movement ability, so they're pretty easy to hit anyway. So I think Soldier will crank out a lot of damage now, even without the damage numbers being changed. However, he is hurt a little bit. The heal station is hurt by DPS passives. So taking these 1v1s at long range are going to feel really bad for the Soldier, I think. Which is what it did anyway. So I think Soldier is going to be, sidestep. He's going to feel basically as good as he did before. Maybe slight increase, just because it's going to be more consistent in applying the primary fire shots, and then they can't heal it off as easily. And Visor's probably now better at taking 1v1s than it was before, because I say 1v1s, it's better in the 1v2, but if you started with the 1v1 and then a support tried to help the other one, they can't help them as easily as before, so you can kind of like guarantee a kill with a Visor. But as I said, the raw damage number didn't go up, so arguably the base level of it overall is weaker, but again, that's true for most heroes in the game, so I think it's going to be a sidestep for Soldier. Alright, now we get to what I think might be the biggest change, certainly in the DPS department. I think Sombra is going to have a huge upturn here. And I think if you are Korean, let's be honest, if you're Korean who loves to play dive, Sombra will be in your dive comp almost certainly. And again, it looks so inconspicuous. She gets 50 more health. But the other changes to the core gameplay experience are so much more affected by Sombra than anyone else. Sorry. Why is that? So, and I called it here, it's a stealthy buff. Mainly, her ultimate, it deals percentage damage, right? So, everyone gaining a health pool increase does not affect Sombra's ult at all. And actually, one of the big things about it is Sombra's ult is an AoE ult, which means that not only are you doing a big amount of damage, not only are you going to be, locking people out of their abilities for whatever it is, 2 seconds right now for EMP. I don't care to look it up, it's a few seconds. Also, it's going to apply the DPS passive as well on the EMP. So anyone that gets EMP'd is going to receive 20% less health. So if you're hit as a team EMP, you're fucked, you're dead. Sombra's ult is going to be like what it was in the past, where it's just going to be a team fight winning ult. If you hit 5 people with your ult, you're going to kill them. And I think if Dive is going to beat Rush, and one of the things that's going to stop Rush being just, meta on all maps, is that Sombra will be able to build really quick EMPs off Rush comps, and then she's going to EMP you eventually when you get close to the team, and you are going to die. Your Baptiste, assuming it's a Baptiste in the Rush comp, has no way of living. He will take 20% less from his self-healing. Even like the amp heal from Lucio is not going to be enough. Your other heroes, they won't even have their abilities for 2 seconds, right? So it's irrelevant. It's when they get their abilities back up, they just can't do anything. So I think Sombra is going to be truly, truly frightening. She might even have the best ult in the game. I know. It's funny because Sombra right now, everyone's poo-pooing her. But just because of the way that the changes are made, it might end up not making her number 1. Maybe she's, again, like 2, 3, 4. But it's a huge upswing in playability, right? The sad thing about it, though, is that the DPS as I said, DPS size, what I'm talking about here. The projectile size changes are going to make her weaker at 1v1ing heroes. She's going to be worse as playing as a flanker, full stop, because she had kind of a slender hitbox. She dodged here and there. She has got a movement ability in Translocator. It's going to be easy to, hit her through a Translocator, if you know what I mean. So I think you're going to be not 1v1ing as Sombra as often anymore. Nor do I think you're going to be, I don't think you're going to be fighting people as a spawn camping hero. But what I think you're going to be doing, you're going to be playing I think it was it Lip who used to do this? Where he built unbelievably quick EMPs. I think it was Lip who was building the fastest EMPs. You're just going to stay near your team. You might even play with your tank, almost like an off-tank, like some weird off-tank. And you're just going to constantly be shooting people again and again and again. You'll use your movement ability to take other angles, but not super greedy angles where you're going to be, chased down. Just take off a, perpendicular 90-degree angle. You'll be trying to hack the enemy tanks so that your tank or your team can apply the DPS passive more frequently. And you're just going to try and build EMP. And as soon as you get EMP, you EMP the entire team and you win the fight. And it's going to be really obnoxious. The other funny thing about this hero is that Virus applies the DPS passive for 2 seconds on top of the Virus effect. Now, if you don't hack a target, Virus lasts for 4 seconds. If you hack them, it lasts for 2 seconds. But the damage comes through, in 2 seconds. It's front-loaded. It might be better for most cases, therefore, to not hack targets anymore if you're going to virus them. And I think this is true for most situations. You will throw your virus at someone, you'll let the 4 seconds go off, which is 6 seconds of DPS passive. And that is going to be horrible for people to fight with, right? There will be some situations where I think hacking is going to be important, and it's mainly going to be on tanks, and or if you're trying to fight a hero with a very strong CC ability like Sleep Dart and Ana, maybe you'll try to hack them, or Cassidy with the magnetic grenade. Maybe you hack them just so that you're safer dealing your damage and then you can translocate out. But I think Sombra, her playstyle, is going to be rewarded if you play close to your team so that you don't get, put into these 1v1 situations where you have to fight someone from the enemy team. And I think you're in a worse case when that happens. Just another side, no damage changes, full stop. So her time to kill has been increased, but I think her ultimate is just going to be so bonkers that she's going to be an ult bot. She's going to return to Sombra ult bot. So we'll see if that actually comes to fruition, but I can definitely see a world where against rush comps, you might play Sombra Tracer Winston dive. And then against a rush comp, you would play Sombra Genji Winston dive, because then the Genji gets more value dash resetting through a group of people and applying the debuffs. And also gets more value from an EMP. Like, imagine an EMP and start doing dash resets through it. Holy shit, that is going to be so strong. So I think dive is actually going to be in a pretty good state. But again, it's going to be on maps where dive was historically good. If it's just like this large flat plane, then eventually you're going to catch the Sombra, right? You can just rush on the Sombra. Her movement ability isn't that insane. But if you can translate it to high ground, or, you know, vice versa, another high ground, she'll be really strong. Alright, let's flip-flop again to bad heroes. Symmetra, she gets 50 shields, not health, it's shields. So these are the health resources that regenerate naturally if you shouldn't take damage for X amount of time. I think it's like 2 seconds, right, on shields. And she got a beam width increase, which is just irrelevant, who cares? Now, the big thing for Symmetra, she got no damage increase to right clicks, and I believe, I've been led to believe, that her right clicks are in the 5-strike category, so they don't get a projectile size increase. One of the obnoxious things about Symmetra, and let me just check these damage numbers. One obnoxious thing was 2 right clicks would kill people with Symmetra. I'm not sure it does anymore to at least all the cast. What is your right click damage? Was it like 120? Oh, 50. Please. 50 direct, 50 splash. Okay, so it was 100 damage. So she would 2-shot 200 health heroes. Now that she's going, most of the heroes are going to 250 health, except for Tracer. Some of the hell are going to 300. She has to 3-shot heroes again with a right click. So her right click poke damage has been nerfed, which is a really big nerf for this hero because her beam form was her weakest form without a shadow of a doubt. Sure, eventually on certain points you might get into a situation where you can just beam off a Ryan shield or something and build up this tier 3 charge. But it's super slow. You need to get really long, drawn-out fights. And maybe fights will get more drawn out because the health pool increases, so maybe this change will lead to just a difference in playstyle for Simrite. It's going to move her power from a right-click poke to a left-click slower build damage, right? But my gut feeling is that there are better situations to play in close range than Symmetra. The fear of a right-click 2 times kills you is gone. I think it's going to be a huge nerf to Sim. The only, again, counter to this is her ult isn't really changed by it because she doesn't receive any damage number changes. But her ult doesn't do damage, it's just a shield. So her stonks on her her ult are going to go up. And also a big shield, right? Very good for stopping people taking the DPS passive. Very good for allowing your supports to receive passive healing again. So, I say massive arrow. I think it's just going to be arrow like this. Maps where Sim was good before, like Night Market or it's called Village, right? Nepal Village. I always mix up those maps. The one where you play in a close room. She's still going to be good there. I don't think she's going to feel quite as good. You'll probably want to rush to the point. Take these long sustained fights rather than like these like pokey beginnings. Maybe that's good enough, but my gut tells me that bunkering down with Sim is not going to be good. I think it's a bit of a nerf to the bunker comps. Again, is that a bad thing? It really depends. Alright. Torbjorn, other hero who got no love. So, he has received 50 health, not armor. He's received health. And that's it. They have not changed the damage on any of his kit. And more to the point, his turret didn't receive any damage improvements, and his turret doesn't get a benefit from the projectile size increase, so it's actually a really big respective nerf compared to the rest of the cast. Your turret is, like, fucking negligible now. It's like it's an annoyance at this point. And you bear in mind as well, Tracer got another 25 health. You're not doing additional damage. That lets you survive through 3 more turret plinks. You know, that's more than enough time for Tracer to kill one of your backline. So I think it's actually a really big nerf, this patch to Torbjorn. There's also no other changes to the damage, and they're a bit of a spammy hero on their primary and secondary fire. To be fair, on primary and secondary, they'll get more benefits on the projectile sizes than they would have received. He's a low mobility, wobbly little fucking hero again, right? So spamming these chokes, he's probably going to get more headshots than he did before. So maybe you're looking at it in that way, Torbjorn is going to be better. But I think just generally there are going to be better heroes at doing that than Torbjorn, aka Sojourn. So why would you play Torbjorn? One reason why you might want to play Torbjorn, and again, this is a pretty fucking niche case. Some heroes got armor increase rather than health increase, and that might mean that the Molten Core Ultimate, which does more damage to heroes with armor than not with armor, actually reduces the time to kill on those heroes, or at least, like, respective to other things, reduces the time to kill than others, especially if you only got, like, 25 armor. Because I think Molten Core does an additional 90 damage per second when you have armor. So if you get 25 armor, I assume you still take, like, 90 tick all at once, right? So you're taking, like, an additional... I don't know how this is going to work out. It's going to be, like, an additional 60-ish damage, 65 damage on the first tick of Christmas. And that might hurt some heroes versus other ones. Generally, though, I think nerf. Pretty big nerf to Torbjorn. If they do come back and they bring the turret back in line, though, with the health changes of other heroes, then I think this hero is actually a slight buff because of the projectile size changes. But the turret is just too big. The best use of the turret was, making flankers' life a misery, and it makes their life less of a misery now, so it just has to be a flat-out nerf. Alright, I think I've said this like 3 times. Tracer is another one of these really, really, really interesting cases. Like many people, when they announced the health changes, that if you got out of a fight for 5 seconds, you would regenerate health, I was worried about Tracer because it seemed like an ability or a passive that would affect Tracer more so than any of the other casts, maybe with the exception of Sombra, who is in a very similar category. Tracer is so good at engaging in a fight and then just flat out fully disengaging and just escaping. She is so fucking hard to catch and kill, this little blinky fucker. I was worried that what was going to happen was that, and this again was before the numbers were announced, that she would... Normally what happens is she'll get a fight, you spam her out, she goes get a pack, comes back and fights again. So she has this power curve where she, she's weak, she enters a fight, her power level comes up, she fights you, she tries to 1v1 you, eventually do enough damage to force a recoil, her power level goes down, and she will then seek opportunity to escape, and then her power level goes back to normal. I was worried that during this time, the downtime between another cycle coming again, that it would get cut short to like here instead, that she would recall, blink away from battle, and then in like a second or two afterwards, or maybe 3 seconds, the time it would take shorter than getting a pack, she would just regenerate back to full health again passively. And I thought you would just have this incredibly high uptime with this Tracer. Really high tempo, threatening hero. Her ultimate is really bonkers as well. But 5 seconds, that's pretty long. It's probably the equivalent time to getting a pack. I think what will happen now is that she gets like really, really chunked down. She can get a mini and then get back to the battle at full health instead of needing to find another mini or a little bit of extra top up. So I think the general passive will be better on her than most heroes. However, she's going to be hurt by the projectile size more so than, again, a lot of heroes in the cast. Again, it's probably like top 5, more so than most of them. So, Tracer's thing, right, is you strafe left and right, you're blinking around, you're, I guess, recalling as well, but that's like your damage mitigation, right? You have a slender little hitbox, and you crouch, you move, and you're just really fucking hard to hit, right? With the projectile size increase, you are way easier to hit doing this now. It makes movement and mobility weaker. It means you're not mitigating as much damage as you were before. So I think she is unnaturally hurt by the projectile size increases compared to other heroes. Even though the pulse pistols now, she's going to be easy to one clip, she's going to be more of a glass cannon. There's definitely some situations where GM players are just going to click her in the head twice as like Cassidy, and she will just die. She'll fall over. And that's going to be really bad news bears, right? She's also received no damage changes, but the Pulse Bomb Ultimate will still do the job it did before. It's meant to be an O, sorry. It does like, is it 350, 400 Pulse Bomb right now? It's still going to one-shot squishies. And in fact, because the projectile size is increased, she might build them faster now. So you could argue that the projectile size is going to be a buff for her because she'll build ults faster. She might have more one-shot kills, and the ult still one-shot kills people. But she is making a big risk getting into fights now. So I think what is going to happen here is that Firstly, if dive, like, is very good, I think Tracer will slot into that Sombra Tracer dive, unless you're trying to deal with, like, a big Death Ball-y comp, in which case Genji might be better. I'd also mentioned here, and I didn't mention really at the time, Winston's Bubble is going to be pretty useful for flankers to avoid the DPS passive, and also to cleanse it off by just waiting in there for 2 seconds. She's also going to have this unbelievably high skill ceiling. She's already, like, I'd argue the most high-skilled hero in the game. And you're going to have to play even better, because you're not going to be able to just rely purely on your movement abilities now to dodge shots. You're equally going to have to be blinking to areas where there is extra cover, and you can dodge back behind cover again just for survivability. So your map knowledge, your blink knowledge, how far you blink and stuff, the cooldown management, it's all going to have to be like creme de la Edgar for Tracer players now. And I think this is going to make your God tier Tracers, like for EU, this is obviously like Kevster, it's going to separate them from your general average GM player, let's put it that way. Not going to name any names there. You know what? Let's not burn bridges. Okay, finally, and this is another hero which I'm just going to spoil you, I think is going to get a pretty big buff. Widowmaker. So, she's the only hero in the game now, I believe, that can one-shot headshot squishies in the cast. She still does 300 damage on a headshot, fully charged shot. Also, the projectile size makes that easier, and she's not as affected by projectile sizes, because she normally plays super, super far away from battle, right? Like, a battle's going on over here, and fucking Widowmaker is, stood over here, doing 7 shots, 1 kill, right? That challenge. You having a bigger projectile size is going to make it easy for you to headshot the people over here. And if the person over here, is a fucking Torbjorn, it's going to be really hard for him to send an a river all this way over here to headshot the Widowmaker back, right? As there is a travel time. So I think generally more so than anyone else, Widowmaker is not affected by this patch. And not being affected by the patch, and in fact being slightly buffed because of the projectile sizes, means that you are going to be one of the big winners of the patch, right? It just innately you have to be a big winner. And Widowmaker's not in a particularly strong place right now, but she's definitely not in the weakest spot of all the heroes. She has her niche on certain long-range maps, for example. Like Junkertown, which is receiving changes. And also, nerfing oppressive heroes like Pharaoh and Junkertown, right? Hopefully soon they'll change Havana because, the oppressiveness of the Junkrat, right? Right? Anyway, to get back off topic with this obscure tweet that was sent out last night. So yeah, projectile size is going to be really good for Widowmaker. Also, this general health pool, she's not going to be in the fight that much, so she's going to be using that 20 health per second or whatever it is more frequently than other heroes, as she just simply won't be in range, right, to take the damage. Her downside, though, is of all the heroes in the roster, in the DPS category, she's probably the worst one applying the DPS passive, right? Sure, she can just shoot the Widow's Kiss in like the machine gun mode. I don't quite know how that works for proccing at a distance. Like, can she machine gun across the map, do 1 damage to each hero, and that applies the effect? Because if so, that's going to be a little bit obnoxious. I feel like there should be a little threshold above it. But in general, she's going to be sniping people, which means that if she hits the shot, then she applies the passive. If she doesn't, she doesn't. Much harder to do than like Mei, who's just beaming into like a Ramattra, right? I think, and I've mentioned this before again, to get round to the full cycle of comps, I said that I think Brawl is going to be good with Ryan, Lucio, Mei. I think Dive is going to be good with Sombra, Tracer, Genjis, Winstons. Poke, I think Sig is going to be really good into Poke, and I think you're going to run Hanzo Widow for the most part. Occasionally you might slot an Ashen instead for the Widowmakers in case you're going into like a Brawl and you can't stay at very, very long sight lines. Like you're at more of a mid to long range fight. Or they start fucking TPing on you and stuff like that. But I think this Poke style is going to be really scary. Hanzo is obviously like a really good synergy with Widow anyway, even without the one-shot capability. He will apply walls, right, for Widowmaker, and walls is very good for Widowmaker. Hanzo will also be able to explode shields, which means Widow will be able to headshot people even more easily than before. And then again, as I mentioned, Sig is going to just be denying this angle from the other snipers, and will be allowing you to cleanse the DPS passive to heal and so on and so forth. So I can see that type of comp being very good. And if you wanted my opinion of the rest of the roster, I think you'll probably run Zen and Bap. I think it's just the classic look of the poke comp, right? I think that's going to be really good, because I think Zen is also going to get a pretty big buff this patch. And Bap, I think, is a bit of a side character. But we'll mention Bap in a moment. Alright, now we get to the supports, the final role. And honestly, what this entire patch was designed to do was to... It was to kind of curb the effectiveness of supports, to change how burst healing worked, so that it felt like DPS heroes could kill people, but without at the same time making the supports just these fucking squishy ass little heroes that couldn't do anything. And it just became a game of who can kill the opposite supports quicker than the other one. As that is not fun and interactive for your support players, and probably is going to do a bit of a number on your player base. As a general rule of thumb, though, it will be harder to stay alive as your supports because of the DPS passive. That is just frankly a matter of fact. There's very few supports that can mitigate the DPS passive. Break is actually one of them because she has a shield, so she can actually do it a little bit. But all the rest of them kind of just have to, break line of sight instead. And if you're breaking line of sight, you're probably not in line of sight of your team then. I know that doesn't quite always work out. Sometimes you're not in line of sight of the enemy team, but you are in line of sight of your team. Hey, it's going to require some good coordination, right? But that will sometimes happen. You'll just get forced out of line of sight of your team, and your team will die because you couldn't get shot again, basically. They forced you out. And that will be more of an issue now than it was before. Anna, first one. New passive hurts burst healing the most. Anna is a big burst healer. So I think the passive from the DPS is going to hurt her more than most of the other supports in the roster, right? She got no increases to her damage numbers, no increases to her healing numbers. She actually just got 50 health. And this is going to be the moral of the story of the support role. They mainly just get health. And that's that. What I will say is that the time to kill enemies is going to be longer on Anna now because... the time to kill enemies just in general is going to be long because of the health pool. And not many heroes got damage increases to reflect the health increases. And this is going to make taking advantage of antis harder, right? You used to anti people and they would just explode. However long that was with whatever health they had remaining, I think antis is the nade 50 or 60 damage? It's there or thereabouts. It'd leave you on 140 health. You couldn't heal for X amount of seconds. And you would get dove by someone and there was just no way of keeping you up, barring immortality. So it made Kiri and Batlamp very useful. And they've slowly been, bringing anti back over time. And I think this is the ultimate form of just killing the anti-nade, right? If you anti-nade the enemy team, they have an extra 75 health, they're more likely to survive through being anti than they were before. It's that simple. Also, as I said, the burst healing has reduced. So nading one of your teammates, or even yourself, isn't going to provide quite as much of a healing boost as it did before. So you're going to struggle to single target heal a person, right? And I think, again, this is going to be a bit of the moral of the story. I think for supports, if you are a burst healer, and you just do a huge chunk of healing at a moment, you're going to get really hurt by the DPS passive. If you're a single target, you're going to get hurt a little bit less, but still pretty bad. If you're both of these, you're fucking big sad crying times. If you do AoE, passive healing, you are still going to get hurt by this, but not as much, right? They're probably not putting the DPS target on every single hero in the game. There are some people that can do it, but for the most part, someone is going to get focused down. So the AoE healing is going to be generally fine. That is my opinion on this. So I think by the matter of fact that heroes have more health and the burst healing is weaker, Anna is just going to get pretty heavily nerfed. So much so that I'm not even sure she would see play in the Winston dive comp anymore. I think it's going to be a pretty slim picking for Anna players. It's a really fun hero to play, and maybe it ends up being that the Genji blade with 2 extra swings is so fucking bonkers that you still run Anna to get nano boost on your Genji. But I think there might be better ways of doing that now. I don't know how Kuriko Rush works with the Genji blade now for swipes. If that gives you an additional couple of swipes as well, then Kiri Rush plus Genji blade will probably be a combo instead. One thing I will say though, if you are an Ana enjoyer, the projectile size change is probably going to make Ana a better duelist than before. She doesn't have any movement abilities to really get impacted by the projectile size changes, and she's shooting people pretty regularly, so I think she's going to be a bit of a better duelist than she was before, or at least, like, it's going to work out pretty even in the wash, but I think in general, Ana, big sad times. Okay, BAP is an interesting one. So BAP does fall into the category of burst healer, so that is a big downside. However, there are some other aspects of his kit that actually get a big boost, and I think overall, it's going to work out that BAP comes out about the same / slightly higher than before. It kind of depends on comps and situations. There's definitely some situations where I think it's going to be down, some it's going to be up. And it's going to be dependent on your playstyle and, what you're playing with and what you're playing against. So he only got 50 health again, story of the patch. No damage changes, no healing changes. His shift is going to be way, way less useful if you're in a DPS duel with someone. Right now, I think it's like 100 health you get off it. I don't remember the exact numbers again, so apologies for that. He gets a big chunk of healing. Obviously, though, if the DPS is dueling you, you get 20% of that amount, which is not as much as it was before, so you're easy to kill in a duel. However, this hero pumps out a lot of damage. Like, if you look at the numbers during, I guess the Overwatch Champion Series, as it will be soon, if you watch, like, RuPaul's or Landon's damage numbers, they are insane. They are like DPS heroes. And they still have this insane healing. His damage is only going to increase from getting a projectile size increase. He doesn't really have big movement abilities. He does have the big leap up into the skybox. But that obviously made him really weak anyway to getting headshot and body shot. And I don't think the projectile size increases is really going to make that any worse. It was bad before, it's going to be worse now, but it was still bad before, right? It doesn't matter. What will matter though is you securing kills. Like if you get into a duel with like a tracer, you might be favoured to win the duel now, I'm not going to lie. Especially bearing in mind, I mean, as I say here, we pump out insane damage. I'll come back to this one in a moment. One thing to take into account, lamp locks heroes at percentage health. So everyone getting more health means that the lamp locks them at a higher base number than before. So it's almost like the lamp has received a healing buff, unlike everything else in the game. So if you're dueling a Baptiste and he still has the lamp and stuff, I think the Baptiste beats most of the DPS more often than not still. Obviously, forcing out the lamp is a huge thing anyway, so maybe you would argue that's still a win, but I think this hero is going to still be pretty fucking good. Also, projectile size increases means you're going to do more accidental damage through a window, so his ultimate is going to get better. And I think when this all breaks down, this hero is going to be a damage, apparently. Fucking genius. He's going to do more damage, but he will do less healing. That's going to be the trade-off. But I think because there is a trade-off, and there's not really a big trade-off in Ana, I think that BAP will still see play. And I still think he'll see play in Rush, even though, again, he doesn't do as much burst damage, but he's still doing like this accidental splash damage from his nades. He's still doing AoE healing from his nades, AoE healing from his shift. And I think that is going to make up for it. And the damage probably more than makes up for this heal change. So if you're a Baptiste enjoyer, I think times are going to be still pretty good for you. I think you'll be played both in Poke and in Rush, as you were before. Okay, Brigitte. Brigitte got a pretty fucking big change, but I think overall it's going to... Okay, this is a weird one. I think she gets a slight buff, mainly equal, but I think respective to the entire hero roster, she's actually going to get nerfed because of another hero, who I'll talk about in a moment. She's received a 28% increase in flail damage, which is huge compared to the health increases of most of the heroes in the game. It's actually more so than most of the heroes in the game, right? The problem with Brig, though, is she's lost her breakpoint on Tracer. She used to be able to one-shot people by flailing, bashing, and then whip-shotting them. It did 155 damage. Because none of the other numbers have gone up, it's merely just, the extra 10 damage on the flail, which really just reflects more of the quick melee damage, to be honest with you. She now does 165 damage instead of Tracer sits at 175 health. I don't play lots and lots of Brig. I know you can do like these swing shield cancels. I am certain the best Brig players in the game will find a way of doing a swing cancel and then breaking this threshold again. Like, it's probably going to be a swing cancel, shield bash, swing, whip shot instantly. Maybe you can cancel the second swing, and that will take you to like 200 damage instead, or 210 damage, which will be enough to kill a Tracer, but it just makes this a little bit harder. So Tracer is going to be a bit more survivable into you, which is a little bit of a shame, because you mainly play break into dive with Tracers, right? However, the DPS passive, as I mentioned, AoE healing I don't think is effective as much by it. Obviously, it's somewhat. It obviously affects her armor packs more than the Inspire healing. I don't put it on here, but it is a single target healing, so it's going to be bad. But I still think versus dive comps, Inspire is going to be more than enough to make up for the DPS passive. You're probably still going to have to keep a lot of your team up. I give a hint here about the hero I think is going to be better at doing this, though. She is not affected by the projectile size changes particularly. I don't know if her flail counted into that. Maybe it does, I don't know, but I assume her whip shot counts towards it. I assume a rocket flail doesn't. So I think it's going to be a net nerf. However, as I mentioned before, she has got a shield, so she can kind of mitigate it to some degree, but it does mean that projectile size increases means that a shield is going to get melted slightly quicker, so she's going to have less shield, less likely to shield bash. She can't kill the Tracers anyway. So even though she does get this damage up, which is pretty nice, I think overall it will lead to a net nerf of Brigitte. And in lieu, Lucio can kind of occupy a similar spot to Brigitte within dive comps, with like an anti-dive aspect, if you know what I mean. So like stop them or hinder them in the dive. And Lucio gets Giga Buff, but we'll get to Lucio in a moment. Okay, Alari, again, I don't want to go through too much of this. You get an idea now about the projectile size versus you and versus them. She got 50 health. She didn't get a damage change. The projectile size increase gives her more chance to headshot, and that's kind of the gimmick of the hero. She can take an off angle and start headshotting people like a sniper. Unfortunately, she's very hurt by the DPS passive. Maybe, again, more than any of the other healers. She's kind of in this Ana category. She has a huge amount of burst healing via her right click and her pylon, right? That pulsates and does big heal, then nothing, and big heal, then nothing, then big heal, then nothing. She's also easy to hit during outburst. She has got a movement ability. It's outburst. It's not the greatest escape tool in the game, but certainly now if she boops someone away and then goes into the air, it was kind of hard to hit that shot. Right? It's now so easy to hit the shot, so she's probably a little bit more squishy than she was before. And then her ult has received no damage number changes. It's fixed damage, so the higher health pool increases mean her ult is worse. So overall, Alari, toilet tier, really bad, not particularly good right now, and honestly all these changes just lead to her being in a worse state than before. Basically the only thing she gets rewarded for is headshotting people. It's easy for the headshot people, but she's not going to kill people after she headshots them, right? She's still a support. She's going to get damage number increases, so it's kind of irrelevant. Kiriko. People's bane of the support existences. She received no damage changes. She just got a health change, right? Health change and her kunais have increased in size, but not as much as other heroes of a similar size. So these things are still pretty fucking big, by the way. I did see a graphic of the size, and her new size of her kunais is actually pretty close to what Junkrat's projectile size was before the patch will be. So she's going to be headshotting people pretty fucking frequently, honestly. So I do say the kunai size does increase, but not as much by other heroes. So it's kind of like, a net down, but it's only a slight one because they were pretty big to begin with. However, this hero's got some pretty nice advantages. She can cleanse the DPS passive. Apparently it has been confirmed that this is the case. So if, somebody's getting hard focus, she can cleanse them. She gets the healing boost then from the cleanse itself, and she can heal people back to full efficiency. So she is a single target healing, and it's pretty low healing, but she's going to be pretty consistent at doing it compared to some of the other supports in the game. Downside, she can't double headshot squishies anymore. It only does 226 damage, so she needs to weave in a body shot to kill the 250 health heroes. It's still a lot of damage, though. Getting 2 headshot by Kiriko, it's still a lot. But hopefully it means that you're going to less likely to receive these, headshots across the map where you just die and you lose the fight from it. You're more likely to survive one of these now. Yeah, I mentioned here that without like the cleanse, it's low single target healing. So it's going to be hard to keep someone up through the DPS passive. She basically can't. However, I think she's going to be an insane jeweler still. It's not going to change anything. Her playstyle will be, your team will play over here. She will flank solo over here. The enemy team will be here, and you'll just be fishing for fucking headshots on this angle. And if they ever dare push you out, you just TP back to your team, then go over here and take this angle instead and start shooting from this side. She's going to be a duelist almost in the support category, and then will top people up a slight amount. What I'm not certain she'll get away with, but I think she still will do, is some people were running like Kiri, Lucio, Jungle Queen comps. Obviously, you're losing a lot of healing now. It was a pretty low healing comp anyway. With the DPS passive, that's even less healing. But I think the pick potential on it is still good enough. And I think the cleanse, if one person gets stuck really badly, the cleanse is going to be huge. It's going to be a huge burst of healing. So I think when all is said and done, it's going to be a nerf to Kiri, but it's going to be a very small nerf, and I think with respect to the other supports, through the balance patches, I think she'll basically stay the same as where she is. I think she'll be very strong still. Lifeweaver the Lifeweaver. I think this hero is going to get fucking destroyed in this patch a little bit. Same reason we were talking about before. Single target healing, really hurt by the DPS passive, right? Womp womp. He's going to live and die by how much the projectile size increases affects his damage output. He might change his playstyle from this single target healing heal box. You could put him out insane levels of healing, right? But typically you are healing more than doing damage. If it turns out that this guy fucking does insane damage and like shred tanks and stuff, he may find a new niche as someone that can like kind of off angle slightly and, pump out some damage into a tank or something. I suspect that won't be the case though, but I'm trying to give you something to, a straw to hold on to, okay? Lifeweaver the mains. This guy's still going to be really hard to kill. He gets another 50 health, right? Even with the DPS passive, his dash, which will do 20% less healing, is still going to make him pretty awkward to kill. He's going to be going up platforms, dashing, down platforms, up platforms, dashing, pulling people to you, He's going to be a bit of a pain in the ass to kill. Again, the tree is worse than it was before, but not too bad. It is an AoE healing ability, so even though single targets in the tree are not going to receive as much healing, the general team will receive the healing, so it is a nerf to the ultimate, but it could be worse. The unfortunate thing is, though, that, it doesn't really affect sound barrier this patch, and sound barrier, It's pretty good. Sound barrier is pretty good, okay? So yeah, I think pocketing a hero that's fighting a DPS as Lifeweaver is going to be way less good than it was before. But if you're dueling someone else, then it's going to be easier for you. So if you like to, duel people as Lifeweaver, here's the patch for you. If you like to heal people as Lifeweaver, maybe wait a week and see how the patches change from there on. Alright, here is the winner of the supports. Lucio, huge winner of the patch. So he gets 50 health, in tune with everyone else. Soundwave, which is his boop ability, has received a pretty big damage increase. I know it's 25 to 35, but that's a 40% increase in damage, I believe. Yeah, 40% increase. Also, his little Cheerios on his primary fire, they're getting a pretty big size increase. So even though this hero is more mobility based and the projectile size is going to hurt him pretty well compared to other heroes, I think at the same time him doing more consistent damage is also going to go up, and it'll probably break out in the washes, almost an equivalent situation. What is huge though are these numbers. 12% increase on the knockback and look out of the duration of movement of 0.3 to 0.45. So that's a 50% increase. This means that Lucio is going to be able to get environmental kills way more consistently. He's going to be able to counter dives way more consistently. A bit like, Brig whipshotting a Winston. You're going to be able to boop the dive back with a Lucio, and you're still going to have this AoE healing like the Brigitte, right? And one thing about this is environmental kills from this patch. The value of these actually goes through the fucking roof. It's like, in fact, let's draw it in stonk terms. Before, it's like pretty good. And then just suddenly environmental kills is like, oh my god, it's so good. Reminder, if you kill someone with an environmental kill, you get the ult charge from their health remaining. So if you're booping like fucking 300 health Mei, you're getting a huge amount of ult charge on your Lucio. If you're booping 700 HP Malga, or if it works out now, 750 health Malga, and it was basically impossible to boop tanks before, but now with the movement lockout plus the knockback increase, there's definitely some maps where, they're more boopy than others, like Well, or not Control Center, not Night Market, the other one. You know what I mean? I can't remember his name. But on the bridges of that map, if you boop the fucking tank off, you might actually legitimately just build your ult charge instantaneously. Don't be surprised to see TikTok Reddit, and I mentioned here that TikTok Reddit have received a huge buff this patch. They're going to do the rollout on Lijiang. It'll come to me. They're going to do it on the Lijiang Bridge Market, or whatever it's called. They're going to boop 5 members of the team, and their ult charge is just going to be 100% instantly, because of the health changes and the knockback increases. So, what a time to be a fucking Reddit Lucio, or a TikTok Lucio. It's going to be so good. So good. And then again, I mentioned here, because of the Rhine buffs, and I think Rhine is going to be better than like the average tank through this patch, Lucio also receiving a buff who's part of the, the Rush package. I just don't see a world where you don't have a Rush package for certain maps, for certain teams, where you're going to be running Rhine Lucio. It's just not going to happen. Double negative. But I think Lucio is going to be so strong, and the boop probably more consistent now. And this hero is going to pump out pretty good damage as well. I can definitely see a world where you run Lucio on your dive comps to boop off enemy dives. It does sort of depend on what the other support is that you play with the dive, but we're going to have to see how everything breaks down in the watch, because if it's literally like, if certain heroes just cannot survive anymore through a dive, like an Ana or a BAP, then people will start playing Moira in the dive, so you're just completely undiveable, in which case you kind of become like a dive rush hybrid with your backline taking part in the dive as well. And then chaos ensues, right? So we'll see about this. Alright, Mercy mains, please, I love you, for starters. Big hearts. And big, wet, sloppy kisses, right? I'm a big fan, right? I'm sorry, but I think this patch is going to be big negative for you. I think Mercy might be in one of the weaker states of the support lines as well. Almost unplayable. Why do I say that? Now, I've taken some advice here from Skies, who tweeted out that this change, because I didn't fully fucking understand what this was, is mainly cosmetic. It doesn't do a huge difference, but it does let you do slingshotting a little bit more rapidly than before. So I think it's the time that you could cancel. So like if you Guardian Angel, you can cancel it into a jump, or you can cancel it into like a slingshot where you just keep moving. I think there was a time delay on that before you could do it, but now it's reduced so you can do it more frequently, right? Mercy mains, am I right? And that is the change, but also Guardian Angel ticks down after the cancel, so if you cancel sooner, the Guardian Angel will come back up again sooner, so it's kind of like a movement increase on the hero at the very least. So like, it's just, there's like no downside to it, there's only upside to it. She's also received a change to her sympathetic recovery passive, so this was when she healed people, she heals herself. It used to be 25% of her healing, it's now 40%. But don't get this twisted, this actually isn't a buff, this is kind of like it's a sidestep / small nerf probably. Why do I say that? Because the reason they've changed this is that the DPS passive takes 20% off your healing. Right? You see the problem here? And this is changed by 15% instead. And quick maths dictates this is probably like, equivalent. I know that's not how percentages work exactly, but I imagine if I ran the numbers, they would be basically in line with one another. So this change is really just to keep the sympathetic healing as good as it was before. Is it good right now? Not really, right? It's not great. And at the end of the day, this effect doesn't change your healing on the person you're healing, right? You're still this single target healer. They're still not receiving as much healing. You're receiving the healing. They're not receiving as much, so they're still likely to die during your pocketing. So I think pocketing a hero through these patches is going to be way weaker than it was before, and that kind of removes Mercy's her target audience. Her target audience is there is no support in the game that can do as much consistent single target healing as her. Lifeweaver is the one that comes closest to that, but Mercy is the queen of doing that. And unfortunately, that playstyle has taken a really big knock by the DPS passive, so we'll have to see how this all breaks out in the wash for Mercy. The other downsides of Mercy is obviously she very rarely pulls out, right? Caduceus Blaster to start blasting enemies, and then she started blasting. Fuck, maybe she might have to pull it out more often now because of the healing changes. But one of her upsides was she's really hard to hit when she's doing all this maneuvering and evasive maneuvers and crouch jumping and all that jazz, slingshotting. Obviously, projectile size increases means that you're more likely to get hit during this, so you're going to take more damage during it. So you're going to die more often as a Mercy player. And it's going to be, I'm not going to say through no fault of your own, but even with your insane movement, you're going to kind of have to have insane movement now to be like a top tier Mercy. You're still going to get caught out sometimes compared to how you were in the current patch. The final thing I just want to talk about, and again, this comes back to Pharah. Mercy always had a niche when she was played with Pharah, because Pharah synergizes so nicely with Mercy. It's really nice when you're playing as a Mercy versus if all your team are ground heroes, it's kind of hard to jump into safety from one person to jump Guardian Angel to another person. You kind of always got stuck on the ground and you were always in line of being shot. But if there was let's say a building here and your Pharah was above the building instead on the lips, you could fly up to the Pharah above the building and go down this side of the building instead and break line of sight. And then you could come back to your DPS here and then back to the Pharah. She just gave you an additional axis of movement. And that was so good for Mercy's maneuverability, aka survivability, and so on and so forth. Also, Pharah lacked that survivability, so Mercy gave that for her. So all in all, it was just a match made in heaven, right? Now as the Pharah changes where she can't stay in the skybox as often and kind of gets grounded more frequently, she loses this axis of movement, or as she doesn't have it as an option to her as much as she did before, so she could definitely get caught out in the ground more than she did before. So I think unless you're playing Mercy with something like Echo, who can stay in the air a bit longer. Again, I've not seen the full Pharah rework, and I can't appreciate the full numbers just in a vacuum. It may prove that she's still good enough to stay with Pharah, but I think the Pharah changes have nerfed the pharmacy combo, and thereby Mercy gets weaker. And just this niche where Mercy occupied is just flat out getting weaker, full stop. So I think there's going to have to be some changes to Mercy at some point with how she works, but we'll see with that. It might be in the short term, she just needs some raw number changes to make up for the DPS passive. It might need to be her healing per second goes up slightly. Two final supports, and let me just drag this up a little bit. Both of them are getting pretty good love. Moira gets 50 increased health. I know, Kel Surprise. However, her damage is going up, and it's not by an insignificant amount, right? 50 to 65 damage, that's a 30% increase. I put here, 30% increase on sucking. That's really fucking scary when heroes are getting 25%, 20% health increases. That Moira is getting above and beyond that in damage, so it makes her dueling better. Now, I've just made a point here, and I'm taking the wiki's word as this. Apparently, the healing from right-click damage isn't a percentage of her damage dealt, it's just tied to a number. It's just tied to 24 health per second, I believe, so I think the damage increase doesn't affect her healing or her lifesteal. So, at the same instance as all of this, the projectile size increases are going to make it more likely for DPS to hit her, which means that she's going to receive less healing from her right clicks. But at the same time, she's doing more damage, so I don't know how this is going to prove in the wash. I suspect what's going to happen is at higher ranks, Moira is still going to be really bad, and at lower ranks, she's going to be fucking a god amongst gods. Other things are she's got a movement ability, and again, I've said movement abilities normally are affected by the projectile size changes more than others, but she becomes intangible, so she's not affected by the projectile size changes while moving, as you can't hit her. She is easier to hit while dueling when you're just AD strafing or AS strafing, that type of thing, and she doesn't get as much life steal back from it if she's fighting with the DPS. And she's not going to change her ult numbers. So the DPS passive is going to hurt you during your coalescence. You're not going to have to keep people up as frequently as before. She also got another small change to keep in line with the changes to the projectile size hitbox. I guess this is kind of like a beam-ish, but the lock-on radius is very slightly increased, so it's easy to aim as Moira. I always thought it was really hard to aim as Moira, so I'm glad they gave me that extra 18% to the radius, so you're going to be able to consistently do more damage, I suppose. That will be the wash from this if you're a lower skilled player. And I guess even a higher skilled, sometimes maybe you drift off slightly and now it doesn't hurt you as much. Don't get me twisted about this, there's a lot of negatives to Moira here, but I actually think overall this will be a net positive to her. Backline, flanking Moira style, rewarded, finally. They're listening to the people. But no, I think just because she can fade and get away from the DPS passive, and I think, as I said, that rush and dive could be very strong. And what is the best way to get away from rush? What's the best way to get from dive? Just fucking float intangibly away from them and just create another gap. So I think as a result of where the meta is going to lie, Moira is actually going to be pretty decent. Other key things about Moira is that she is burst heal, but it's AoE burst heal, so it's affected by the DPS changes, but not as much as others could be. And she has an orb to throw with it, so she might run out of P faster now than she did before, but I think if you play her well, and you do play this rush style, and you're very careful with your cooldowns, I think Moira will, at the very least, break out even. But I think she'll get a very, very slight buff because of the damage increase, which will make up for that. And then finally, the final big winner, Zenyatta. So Zen gets effectively 50 health, but it's broken down as 25 health, 25 barrier. Which is nice, because again, if you break line of sight or you don't take damage for a little bit, the shields will come back sooner. Basically, how this is going to work out is Zen is effectively the highest damage dealing DPS in the game, and he's in the support role. Discord Orb is fucking insane. And even if you have 20% more health, Discord Orb laughs at it. You're going to still shred people, and maybe we're going to be in a situation where Discord Orb is just so powerful to dealing with these high health pools that Zen has to become a hero that is good, right? I think it just means that if you're playing poke comps, Zen just makes sense, right? He will do more damage, he'll enable you to do more damage. It's just that type of deal, right? So it's kind of more like, again, a lot of heroes lose a lot coming into this patch. Zen really doesn't lose a lot, and in fact, his niche is more catered to now than it was before, so by proxy, he's going to get an improvement in play. I also think the projectile size increase is going to disproportionately affect Zen more than others because he's a pretty slow fucking floaty hero this time. Not the hardest one to hit, right? His projectile sizes, though, you're going to get 5 orbs across the map, and you're going to get headshot by it because the headshot hitbox will be bigger now because the projectile size are bigger, and the interaction between the two is going to be greater. I say hitbox size, that's actually staying the same, but it's the interaction with it is going to be more big, right? So you're just going to walk across chokes without a shield. You're going to be playing like a Roadhog or something because you're playing on ladder. And you're going to try and, it's going to be like Circuit Royale. You're going to try and get to those stairs, right? And Zen is going to 5-orb you at 300 health and you're going to fall over. And he's going to laugh at you. And that's how a game is going to be. So if you're a fucking insane Zen player and you get on a long pokey map, Zen is going to be a sensible choice. It's going to be a really good choice. And the health in general, sorry, I'm just losing my goddamn mind. The health increase in general is going to make it easier for him to survive duels. He himself is going to be better at dueling, so I think Zen is going to be big thumbs up. Other positive, I didn't realize this until I was looking at some of the wiki. Snap Kick is a percentage. He does, I think, 50% additional quick melee damage. So he's going to do 60 damage per kick, I believe, at least, unless someone else tells me wrong. That's not, insignificant. If you're a Tracer with 175 health and fucking Zen kicks you for 60, you might want to recoil. So, yeah, his survivability in, like, close-range duels is going to be pretty fucking good. The 1-1-1 weakness, though, that Zen is going to have from this, again, it comes with the healing. He is single-target low healing. Lower than low healing, it's percentage-wise not going to be effective as much, right? But still, he's not going to output that much healing anymore. Especially if you're putting your healing orb on like a duelist or something who's dueling another duelist. That's going to be so small. Not insignificant, though. If their duelist doesn't have it, they still have the extra, whatever it's going to work out, like 20 health per second, which might make all the difference. But it's going to be pretty bad for Zenyatta healing numbers. The other thing, though, in particular, is Transcendence was kind of seen as this, it's like the ult-denying ultimate. You just couldn't die through Transcendence. Now, I can't remember the amount it works out as. Transcendence healing is never as much as I think it is. Let me just check this for a fact. Is it around the 100 mark? Maybe even a bit less than that. Where are you, Transcendence? But anyway, you can burst through it. Okay, it's 300. It's way more than I thought. But you can burst people through it. It's hard, but you can do it. Like, if you grab someone and then they trank the grab, you can either shield off the Transcendence, which obviously is not quite the same thing, but with 5 people shooting one person, you can definitely beat 300 health per second. With the DPS passive, though, you're going to lose 20% of that, which quick mass means you're going to be taking 240 health per second, which means it's easier to pick someone out through Transcendence. And I think overall this leads to a situation where, and I always found this to be the case, that support ults were generally the better ultimates. And there's always this argument of what's better, beat, sound barrier, or Transcendence. And there's situations where they flip-flop. Like when EMP was particularly strong, obviously sound barrier gets weaker than Transcendence. And then, if anti-healing is very strong, Transcendence gets weaker and beat gets better. I think all said and done through these patches, because beat is not as affected by the DPS package, the DPS passive. Sorry, I'm losing my voice as well now. It's not as affected much by the DPS passive, that I think of the support ultimates, beat will become the numero uno super ult. Obviously still affected pretty badly by Sigma ult and EMP, which I did say I think both of them were going to be a pretty good thing. But as I said, I think you could realistically get burnt through Transcendence at 240 health per second, so his ultimate is taking a little bit of a hit. Anyway, that is basically the patch notes. There's then some bug changes, some changes to Junkertown. The map has been changed, which I think is a really positive. I hope they go back and revisit some other maps, aka Havana, Circuit Royale, which are also not very good, not very fun to play as. Typically maps with insanely long sightlines, with just, the cart moves in straight lines, then 90 degree, straight line, 90 degree, straight line. They typically are not very fun. And they very much suit insanely long range poke comps. So hopefully Junkertown First now feels a little bit more friendly to other comps as well, because it really got locked in that it's got the circuit situation, right? You kind of just have to play SIG poke comps, SIG double sniper, and that's not very fun. But we'll see. I would like to see them do something to Havana Third in particular. I can live with the first point. I can live with it, okay? That point is good for snipers. I can live with playing the SIG comp. What I can't live with is you get through second, which is also pretty good for snipers, but not insane. And you get to the third point, which is the best sniper point in the game. It's like, no. Please give me some more cover, okay? I'm literally attacking a fucking castle, okay? Unsurprisingly, it's really fucking hard to attack a castle in any game. But especially in Overwatch it is. So yeah, there's some changes to the map, and they're hoping to do more in the future. And then there's a bunch of bug changes. But apparently there is some more bug changes than even mentioned on here, according to some content creators. But I don't know if this is the workshop mode they were playing on. We'll have to see when the patch comes out in like in an hour. Oh my god, I need to get this online. I need to zip it and ship it quickly. Alright, bye!